Hello there. Welcome back to the AgostinhoZinga show with your host, AgostinhoZinga, and this is episode number 669 of the AgostinhoZinga show with your host, AgostinhoZinga, and I hope this podcast is finding you well wherever you may be. I hope this podcast is finding you well wherever you may be. For those of you who are tuning in live to this podcast right now via the YouTube, via the live stream, if you're listening to this video audio platform, you can access my YouTube channel and check out this podcast in live video format at the following location: www.youtube.com/@Tazs with an S at the end. So TAZS Taz with the S at the end, and you'll be able to find the AgostinhoZinga Show channel and check through all the previous live streams and all the clips I put up on that channel also. So don't delay if you want to see what this beautiful face looks like, and all you do is listen to my sultry voice. But yeah, we're back again. It's been a while. I haven't been on podcasting for a while. It feels like maybe for a week, which is probably a little bit too long in podcasting land. But as per usual, sometimes you hear a bit of a rut, you feel like you're talking about the same thing again and again. So it's nice to kind of let the world breathe, let things happen in real time, and then slowly but surely you can start to gather up some bits and pieces of stuff that you can talk about. And by golly, has things kind of kicked off and happened in real time, and now I have plenty of to talk about despite all the things that have been happening. But with me, a personal kind of check-in, what's been going on, not really that much to be fair. I'm slowly but surely realizing, outside of clubbing and whatnot, and maybe going to the gym and maybe going for a run, there's not really much else that kind of drags me outside of my home, which is a little bit of a concern. I'm not gonna lie, something I'm definitely need to address. But I'm thinking, for the last few weeks, because I've been on my little Berghain flipping training program type of thing, right, get myself in nice skinny shape, I've been noticing that when I'm not going out to these clubs or whatnot every single night, especially on the weekends, there's really no excuse for me to be outside of my home, which is wild to say the least. So that's been a little bit of a realization. But apart from that, it's been nice to be at home, checking out some of the footballs and whatnot, reading what I can read, checking out some very gnarly and scary, almost nightmare inducing documentaries about North Korea that I've been watching on various channels, stuff about China and whatnot, get into a doom spiral and start checking up on war footage on places like Ukraine War Report subreddit and whatnot, and checking out all that mad stuff going on there. And it gets a bit crazy, I'm not gonna lie, it gets a little bit crazy, but I've been enjoying it. I think it's kind of done wonders to my pocket and my wallet. I have way more money now than I usually would do in my pocket, because usually around this time of the month, all the money in my pocket has gone, to various flipping adult treats and whatnot. So it's been nice to sort of save those monies that I would have spent on adult treats on some more constructive stuff like hashtag books, right? Look at that. I've got a nice selection of BOOKSs here for the month of May, because as I'm kind of broadcasting the show to you, for those listening to the audio platform, you probably hear this after the fact, but as I'm putting this podcast together, it is now probably about May 3rd when you're hearing this, and these are the collection of books that I'm going to be reading all the way through in flipping May. So, books number one, as I've got here, as most of you guys can see there, number one book I'm going to go through, just to kind of give you an overview of what I've got here so far. I've got Join the Future, which is written by Matt Ennis, and it's the subtitle is Bleep Techno and the Birth of British Bass Music. I think most of you can kind of gather what that's going to be about, so I'm looking forward to tearing through that. Then I've got this book here, which is going to be turned into an actual TV series. It's called High School, and it's by High School, and it's by Tegan and Sarah. It's got a lot of good recommendations from other podcasts I listen to, so I'm going to go check that one out. Because I'm a bit of a history buff, I've got another book here on Roman Empire, right? As you can see here on the screens, most of you can see there. The title of the book is The Storm Before the Storm, The Beginning of the End of the Roman Republic, and this one's by Mike Duncan, so I'm looking forward to tearing into that when I do get a chance. Then I've got another weird recommendation, very, very weird, right? Some of you guys won't get it. For those of you that get it, you'll get it. I've got this book, which is called How to Be a Boss Bitch. How to Be a Boss Bitch by Kristen Quinn. If you know, you know. For those of you who know, you know. I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out also. Big up Kristen Quinn. And the last podcast recommendation here I've got is romantic comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld, which again I've heard recommended on podcasts. I think specifically on How Long Gone, they recommended this book, and I wanted to check it out for the month of May. So those are the books I've got, and I've also got actually one more. Oh yeah, I've got one more to check out here, which I'll definitely be featuring on a random show. I just got delivered this one actually via Joey Diaz's autobiography, tremendous, Coco Diaz, which I'm looking forward to tearing through, but I'll probably be talking about this more on the random show. If you want to check that out, definitely check out my random show stream. But I've got this also that I'm going to be tearing through for the month of May. So that's what I've been doing on that regard. What else has been happening? Oh, it was bank holiday weekend here in London, or here in the UK, sorry. We've got another bank holiday coming up this weekend because the coronation of flipping Prince Charles and whatnot, going into becoming King Charles. And then we've also got, I think, another bank holiday at the end of the month, so it's been a bit crazy, but I kind of missed out on all of it. I kind of purposely buried my head in the sand because I knew I wasn't going out, and because I was a bit sad I was missing out on flipping Berlin May Day. May Day in Berlin looked absolutely crazy. I wish I was out there, but I didn't plan ahead of time, and if you don't plan those things ahead of time, the prices of the tickets are just too crazy. And I know I'm used to paying like maybe maximum for a return flight from London to Berlin about 150, right? Maximum 150. Sometimes I can stretch to 170. But when you're looking at these public holiday times, right, because it's a public holiday over there in flipping Berlin, it's May Day, and of course it's a public holiday here. So usually the flipping low cost airlines ramp those ticket prices up, and the prices I was seeing to go to May Day, which is the 1st of May weekend over there in Berlin. I think some people are still partying now, heading into the flipping Wednesday and whatnot. So usually the parties start from usually midweek, so of the week before, so maybe even Tuesday, Wednesday, and they run all the way until the following weekend, especially if it's over the weekend. It's absolutely crazy. There's loads of really cool, amazing little parties on the street, people going nuts and having a good time. Loads of open air events because the weather really gets nice around this sort of time as well, and just really cool club events in general, and many cool DJs playing. And I really wanted to go, really wanted to go, right? And it didn't happen. It really didn't happen. I didn't plan ahead of time, and then because it didn't happen, I don't know if you guys are the same, but when I want to do something, no, when I'm kind of abstaining from something, I just usually bury myself away. I kind of lock the doors and kind of don't come back outside. But I also do a thing where I kind of pretend it doesn't exist. So because I wasn't going out, I wasn't on Instagram, I wasn't on my usual kind of platforms and channels and whatever it may be, checking things out so I wouldn't get any kind of FOMO. I just kind of avoid it completely. I don't want to see anything. But now, obviously, temptation got the best of me. So I've been browsing on Instagram, checking things. I'll be like, oh my God, it looks so fun. So for sure next year, I'm going to have that scheduled in as a thing to go to, because it's a really easy thing to go to that you can obviously have a good time at. And I think for people that haven't probably been to Berlin before, I think May Day is probably the best time to go for you to get maybe an understanding of what that city is like in terms of its connection to nightlife and parties and DJs and whatnot. It's a little bit supercharged, like I said, because literally it's a public holiday. Things are closed everywhere, but you can all the open spaces get turned into flipping open air events. Any bit of grass, people are playing music from their speakers, or somebody's DJing in some makeshift little rig or something. Like everywhere someone's playing music, right? So it's a little bit of supercharged. But if you want to get a real understanding of what that city is like, I think a May Day is a really good place to get it to, because number one, there's music everywhere. Number two, it's really cheap and for the most part free, so you can go to flipping Spatties or Spatkos, whatever they're called, however you pronounce the name of it, and grab a beer for €1. Maybe now with inflation it's €1.20 minimum, and you can basically do a little bar crawl in all the Spatkos around the area, just Kreuzberg area if you wanted to, and just drink and go to different places. And once you hear the sound, jump in, see what's going on, go somewhere else, see what's going on. Or you could end up going to some of the many parks that they have, and there's always people throwing forest raves around that time. And usually police are a little bit more lax, because for the most part they do kind of hammer down on the forest raves. They don't really like that sort of stuff too much, but usually around May Day they kind of are a bit lax and let people have a good time and whatnot, and you can go and do a forest rave, whatever it may be. So if you wanted to, you could spend your entire time outside, not even go inside of a club, and have a great time. So if you really want to get an understanding of what that club or that city is like, maybe is a good time to go to. But you also have to do it ahead of time, especially if you're coming from London, because the tickets were legitimately insane. Like I said, max I'm paying to go Berlin is 170, especially now when you account for the rise in Airbnb rates. Because I think many years ago, Berlin specifically put in some laws in place where they basically prevented people from price hiking rentals and whatnot, and loads of foreign landlords whatnot were coming in and essentially renting properties in Berlin long term without actually owning them, and then flipping them again on Airbnb to make a profit. But then obviously that was taking away properties from actual people that live there. So Germany and Berlin did a pretty good thing by instituting some laws in place that basically prevented that from happening long term. But obviously for tourists like myself, tourists like myself, it makes it far harder to go there more regularly now, because the prices per night in Airbnbs is nuts. Now it gets to a point now, especially if you start to earn more money or you just become a little bit more mature and maybe your way of flipping raving changes. Now I far much prefer to just get a hotel. I'm not too sure if you guys are the same when you go on holiday, but now I just prefer to get a hotel and just kind of do away with the whole key exchanging and all the rules and whatever else that happens, with flipping Airbnbs, and sometimes the awkwardness of going to someone else's home. Even if you're renting the whole place, you still, it can be a little bit weird, that kind of exchange of like, hey, here we go, here I am handing over the keys to this guy. I don't know if he's gonna flip it, trash my place, if he's gonna be a good guest. It's just a bit of a weird energy. But with the hotel, it's like, it's kind of, exactly what it is, and you just kind of go in, you do the job and kind of head out from there. So now, because of the hike in the flipping per night stays, I found myself going there far less than I did before. Obviously, someone like myself, I think I probably do need to venture out. I'm getting a little bit too Berlin, kind of obsessed, and it's kind of the safe and easy thing for me to do, because it's like going out in a night out here in London. I'm kind of very familiar with the scene. I know a lot about the clubs and where they are and whatnot. I'm kind of tapped into the things I need to be tapped into, so I'm comfortable. Whereas I need to be exploring other places. Like I've been hearing from a lot of my friends that, go to places like Amsterdam, because people are saying like, clubs like the School, which I've spoken about a few times on my podcast. People are saying that place is flipping amazing, and I haven't been there just yet. And just overall, people are loving that scene far more than they obviously do Berlin, because, people, I guess, in Amsterdam are far nicer than some of the Berlin techno hipsters. But overall, that sort of comfortability and whatnot, it led me go more often. But now the price hike and whatnot gets crazy. Anyway, long story short, if you're curious about going to Berlin, definitely recommend you check out those dates around May Day, or just go on May Day. If not, try and go during the winter, because usually the prices for flights out to Berlin in the winter are really cheap, because it's fucking freezing. It's really, really cold. And a lot of people don't like to go there when it's cold, because it's nice to go there when it's hot. You can sit in a park, you can have a beer outside, there's lots of open air events and whatnot. But I'm a little bit of a weirdo like that. I don't really care. I can do either or. I don't need to always be outside. It's quite a nice thing to do, because you have stuff to do during the day, that you can kind of hang out in and whatnot, have, get some fresh air, vitamin D, read a book outside, maybe meet some new people. But it's not kind of, it's not like a need that I must have. But definitely, if you're your first time, I'd recommend trying those two sort of seasons and trying them out. But if you're going to do the May Day, try your best to book that shit early, because if you book it late, like I was thinking to book it, the prices are crazy. I paid max 170, and I was seeing prices on Ryanair return from London to Berlin for like 300 and shit. I was like, nah. By the time you count the accommodation, spending money, picking up gear, you're already looking at $1,000. It's like, that is crazy to go to a place like that. That's legitimately insane. So but yeah, big up everybody that did go out there. And like I said, I spent most of my time, head in the sand, removing myself from everything. Didn't want to see what was going on, because I was afraid I was going to get FOMO. And then when I finally did check it, guess what? I got the FOMO. I got the blood cut FOMO when I did check it, clearly. And one of the things that's been happening, apart from obviously the stuff happening in May Day in Berlin, it was the last event, allegedly, that went down at Printworks here in London. And Printworks, I think I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with Printworks overall. I think I've spoken about that club a lot of times on here on the podcast. But one thing you can't deny, Boardwalk Live, as a promotion company, because it's weird, because I don't know how you kind of view them or how I'd view them. I'd view them basically as like the pinnacle of what promoter want to be, right? When I started promoting clubs as well, around I don't know what time that was. It might have been like 25th. No, not 25th. That was much later later than that. It may have been like 2010, 2011 around that time, right? I started promoting club nights around London and whatnot. The kind of, I think the long-term goal, even if you don't say it to yourself, would be to have an operation that allowed you to maybe open your own club, open your own record store, open your own studio space, or just be like a roaming kind of production company slash sort of thing, right? Where you could put on events in these cool places, maybe festivals and stuff going forward. But I think back then, maybe a lot of people didn't really have those grandiose plans or whatnot. But I think people at London Warehouse events and obviously Boardwick Live really sort of like harnessed that energy and were really steadfast in their plans and had some really big plans, to the point where they got to a point where they were basically in charge of running spaces like Printworks and programming it and whatnot and fleshing it out and making it viable, and over time making it a bit of an institution. So even though I never really kind of vibed with the place and I thought it was maybe a little bit overrated, I think as an operation, Boardwick Live should deserve a lot of respect for what they did, in terms of transforming Printworks into what it is, into it being, even in the short time it's been around in London, it definitely ended up being a bit of an iconic venue to visit, especially if you're somebody that's involved with the scene or just loves techno music in general or dance music overall. It definitely is a good place to go and check out and whatnot. And of course, over the last few weeks, they've been winding down the club and leading up to the closing, because the people that own the land are going to be redeveloping it, the usual gentrification story that we all kind of know and loathe. But it has to be said, this bank holiday weekend raving did look quite special. The headliner, who they didn't announce beforehand, right, special surprise headliner for the Monday, was flipping Bicep, and it's quite, I thought, perfect that they got Bicep involved, when you consider that Bicep, if I'm not mistaken, were first involved in basically getting the club on the map. I remember seeing early sort of visuals and pictures of Bicep's performance at Printworks before they maybe had installed a lot of the flipping audio visual sort of elements there, and the lighting. They did some really cool sort of like screens at the back when they were performing. I think Skepta did a performance there also, where he had a really interesting stage design. So I think those two performances, the Skepta, I think, performance for maybe Konnichiwa, it might have been that album that he dropped, not too sure, and of course Bicep's kind of performance there, I thought basically propelled the club forward, and they got to a place where they were literally basically not short of options in terms of booking some of the best people and putting on some of the best parties. And from what I can see from this clip here via the Printworks channel, God almighty, or Printworks Instagram account, the Bicep event went off crazy. Like, people had a great time. The visuals looked absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to put it up here on the screen so you can check it out here. The caption says, "Closing the doors of the press halls was always going to be a moment etched in our history, and it was only right that we had Feel My Bicep, champions of the scene, close this chapter of Printworks with us. We'll be forever grateful for those of you who joined us tonight over the past 6 years." It feels like the time has flown by, innit? I would have never guessed it was 6 years. It feels like just yesterday this place opened. But this is a clip taken from Printworks London Instagram account, which features Bicep closing out Printworks on Bank Holiday Monday here in London. Honestly, absolutely incredible. Looked really cool. And then they got another post here that shows a lot more pictures, so you can see what the vibe and the scene was looking like. And I think visually, one of the things that stands out about Printworks is that there's no other club, I think, maybe in Europe. Maybe there is in Europe, actually. I take that back. Maybe in the whole of the UK that looks like this. This is what clubs in the UK used to look like. You see, I forgot the name of it, but I think there was a club called Pier 1 here in the UK, and a few others that looked really impressive, though, like in former hotels and whatnot, and just amazing venues. But over time, with our draconian flipping licensing laws and nightlife laws and sound pollution, all this sort of nonsense, we basically became the country where clubs came to die. Club culture died, right? So many clubs have closed over the years. So the kind of onus on club owners or potential club owners to open up in coordination spaces is completely removed. or gone away, because the danger of your club closing soon after you opening it because you had a fight or something, or somebody unfortunately passed away, is really high up, because we don't really have any other solution here in the UK. For some reason, there is no, there is no process where club owners can sit down with local authorities or police or whoever it may be, especially after a tragic event, and come to some sort of resolution that doesn't involve the club, losing a part of its license, having to reduce its opening hours, or just closing outright. So the onus on these potential club owners to come in and create these amazing spaces completely goes away. So now what we have is an absolute deluge of the same thing. These square boxes with some decent spotlights and a DJ booth. But no one's really creating kind of cool, interesting spaces anymore that really kind of make you feel like, even though I didn't enjoy myself in terms of going there, because I thought the sound wasn't the greatest and you had to really get up close to the front to really kind of make it work, I still felt like, for terms of money wise, it was very well worth the money. In terms of a show, they put on an incredible performance. The production involved in Printworks is crazy. You go to, I think when I went, the sort of the section where all the guys do all the flipping audio and the lighting and whatnot, and all the smoke and all that malarkey was at the back. And there was, at least, I kid you not, must have been close to 20 people in that little small cubicle on laptops and shit, moving the soundboard, like really on point. It was like a whole production, like a TV production sort of thing. So they go absolutely crazy when it comes to that sort of stuff. So I feel like when you're paying your £30, when you're paying your £40, £50, however much you're paying to get in there, you're definitely getting your money's worth for it, as opposed to other places where you go where it's just a square room, a rectangular room with a DJ booth at the end, and then you just, basically getting overpriced for some nonsense. But I feel like they did a really good job of the production overall. This again features a post courtesy of the Printworks Instagram account. The caption says, "Our closing show brought together some of the electronic music's most influential artists of our last dance." So they had Bicep playing, they had Peggy Goo, Dixon, one of my favorites, playing. They had High playing there, who I'm a big fan of again, and Fallow Moore, who I think a few of you probably will have seen on Instagram and on YouTube doing absolute bits. So this is obviously a picture taken from up above. And if you're not familiar as well, if you're in case you don't know, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this is right, but Printworks was the venue where, in the new Batman with Robert Pattinson, where he's kind of, fighting people through a nightclub, and it's kind of red tinted, and he sort of punches people up, and it's all kind of looks like it's filmed in one shot. It was filmed in Printworks. I know the club looked like it was in New York, but the inside of the club was Printworks. That's where it was actually at. When you see him kind of walking up on the kind of, onto the sort of, on this sort of, what would you call it? Sort of thing here, you see him sort of punching in the air. This is where he was in Printwork, so that's definitely looking to check out. Let's see a next slide here. More clips from the Bicep show. Yo, big up that Indian dude.
I feel like in current therapy speak culture, the word narcissism is used way too much. Like entire channels dedicated to it with hundreds of videos.
Yo, big up that Indian dude. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Yeah, for sure, man. Narcissism, I think, is an overused term anyway. I saw a really funny video with what's his name? With Juicy Santana, actually, or Saucy Santana, and he was basically saying the same thing. Like, people now have finally, it feels like the internet all discovered narcissism, the word, at the same time. And now people can't stop using it, and sometimes people are just overusing it to describe people who are just being dickheads and selfish and whatnot. And I don't think narcissism is an explanation for everybody being a cunt nowadays on the internet or with people or whatever it may be. Some people are just dicks, and they hide behind these complex psychological terms or these vague, hard to pin down psychological terms, because it kind of makes them seem more interesting than what they are. Some people are just douchebags. Basically, that's basically it. Some people are just douchebags, and they hide behind those flipping labels for the sake of it. But anyway, moving on. Let me just mute this actually, because all the videos keep skipping and it's annoying me. More clips here shows you Dixon here behind the set. He's grown out his hair a little bit, looking pretty cool. Big up Dixon. We're also seeing a clip here that features, I'm not too sure who that's playing here. Let me see here, brother tag. It says here the person playing is Peggy Goo, actually. Okay, big up Peggy Goo. This is Peggy Goo from the back. Let's just see what it sounds like. Okay, that's gonna be pausing again for the sake of it, but yeah, Peggy Goo sounds really good. So big up her. And then we can move on to the next slide. We've got Hi there. I recognize the hair instantly. So big up her. And then the next slide, I think that's Hi again playing. And then what else? Then we got Fallow Moore as well there with his hand in the air, giving it in his classic bucket hat. I wonder if he's actually bald under that bucket hat. Is this like a Tim Paul situation with Fallow Moore? While go on with the hat. What's underneath this hat? Tell us, Monsieur Falomore. Tell us. I would love to know what is under that hat because, god damn it, he does not remove that bad boy. He does not remove it. But yeah, moving on from that, just as an update on Printworks, some actual good news here, courtesy of The Guardian actually. Save the Last Dance, London's Superclub Printworks aims to reopen in 2026. So you have to wait some time, but there's a possibility that Printworks will reopen in 2026 after closing just the other day, basically, which is hilarious because it kind of proves, that all that song and dance they did about flipping closing and whatnot, and it's the last ever event. Rush to get your tickets. They got me really good, right? Pick up the Indian dude. Appreciate you, brother.
Top 5 European nations based on their club scene.
Big up that you do. Top 5 European nations based on their club scenes. Hard one because I haven't been to many. That's a problem. I've only been to clubs in Spain, really. Spain, France, and Germany. I've not been to any other European nation with the purpose of techno tourism. That's why I'm saying I'm getting a bit lazy on the Berlin. So I'm getting a little bit comfortable with the Berlin thing, and I need to kind of explore other options and do other things because when I was on my absolute tip before, when I was doing my techno tourism, I was going to places like Frankfurt. Like that was one of my first trips I went to after going to Berlin. And Frankfurt, if you've been there, it's a really shitty city, really, for the most part. Apart from the financial district and brothels and stuff, there's no reason to be in flipping Frankfurt. But I went there to visit one of the best clubs they've got there in that city. It's called Robert Johnson. It's named after this famous jazz musician, and it legitimately is one of the best clubs I've been to in my entire life. It overlooks this amazing river in Frankfurt. People kind of smoke cigarettes at the back there. The sun rises. It kind of the light bleeds through on the inside of the club. It's kind of like 500 capacity. It's specced out really amazingly. Whatever. But long story short, to answer the question, I need to go to the more European nations to have a better idea of where the top 5 kind of club scenes are. But I would say off the top of my head, from what I kind of know from people talking about various things out there, in terms of scenes, right? I would say Germany, of course. I would say Holland or Netherlands. I would say probably France now. The Paris scene and outskirts is starting to pop off now, or it has been popping up for a while. I would say Spain personally because I always have a good time when I go out there. I know some people don't like it if you're not a fan of the Spanish people, especially the types that come over here and club and whatnot, but I don't mind them. And then I would say lastly Italians as well for the same reason. I feel like those two countries specifically have a very specific club scene, and I love how energetic and enthusiastic they are about it and passionate about the scene. And whatever it may be, they're real fans of the DJs too. I think a lot of DJs will tell you, I think so, the big ones would say that they really love going to places like that, Italy and Spain, because I feel like they get a lot of kind of fan love as well, because I think a lot of people there are heads, there's a lot of chin strokers in that scene. But there's loads of places popping up. I remember somebody told me in my comments I should check out places like Latvia, I should check out places like Denmark, because the city there, Copenhagen, is meant to be pretty popping. Obviously Stockholm and Sweden is meant to be doing some good bits as well. The scene in Portugal I've heard is really good. Places like Lisbon and whatnot are starting to pop off. So there's many locations to go to, but for sure those are the ones I'll kind of mention. And the people are mentioning in the chat, Greece is getting up there. Big up Corden as well in chat. Big up. Louis Vuitton is saying Germany, NL. Yeah, exactly. See, people are saying the same thing I'm saying. Okay, yeah, and Poland. That's what I've heard as well. Nice one, Louis. I've heard the Krakow scene is legit. Like the clubs out there are really good also. So it's definitely ways to check out. And again, I'm not too sure. Is Georgia in the European Union? I'm not sure if they are, but Georgia's meant to be a pretty cool place to go visit. They have one of the best places to club there in the main city there called Tbilisi. One of the legendary clubs out there, so definitely places to go and check out. So yeah, I'm into it. But yeah, going back to this article courtesy of Guardian, It mentions that Printworks may be reopened again in 2026. The article says as follows: after 6 years in which it has established itself as London's most ambitious and visually impressive new venue for electronic music, closed its doors in final time on Monday night. Like countless inner city club closures in recent memory, this was a decision prompted by the commercial demands of our gigantic property developers. Over the next 4 years, the 53-acre site in which Printworks will be flattened and rebuilt as developers British Land and Australian Super, transforming it into a glittering array of upscale shops, restaurants, offices and luxury flats. The issue I have with gentrification, legitimately for me, because I have a complex relationship with gentrification, because in the place that I was brought up in, right, the area that I was brought up in, which is around East London, which is the Custom House, Canning Town area, which happens to be just around the corner from Fold. Like, I was actually brought up in that area, which is pretty nuts to think of. I kind of played around that area for the most part. Where Fold was where all the local kind of postal offices were and whatnot. So if I kind of had a delivery of sneakers from the US or whatnot that I missed out on, I didn't pick up from the shop, I'd have to go and pick it up there around the Fold area, which is pretty funny. So now that place has become like hipster central. But for the most part, that area that I've kind of grown up in, and obviously other parts of East London, were, I think, massively benefited from, light gentrification when we had the Olympics come here, and they kind of, they promised to rebuild certain places, they pumped money to certain things to make it look nicer and to kind of appease the tourists that were coming in, because they didn't want to see a dilapidated, Baltimore in the wire looking ass place. So they kind of injected the money into it, and I think overall it kind of helped the city, or it helped where I was from, look a bit nicer. And of course, a lot of people that I grew up with ended up getting jobs working, during the Olympics, being kind of stewards and whatnot, because they ended up hiring a bunch of people. So gentrification for me, I think, can work sometimes in those kind of cases. But the issue I have to resolve with gentrification is that it's so unimaginative. Like, we have so many of these things in London, right, where it says here, they're going to rebuild that space into a glittering array of upscale shops, restaurants, offices and luxury flats. There's no shortage of these areas in London. Yo, big up that Indian dude. Appreciate the super chat. $5. Big
Georgia
up.
is a good shout. One of the best cuisines I have come across. Later, Zinga.
Yeah, big up the Indian dude. Appreciate you. Oh, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know. Yeah. I don't know. Central European food, or Eastern European, however you're gonna call it, can be a little bit hard for me to kind of get into, because a lot of it's just like meat and potatoes. Legitimately meat and potatoes. They cook it really well, don't get me wrong, but it can get a little bit boring after a while. But I'm open to see what Georgian food is like. That would be really interesting, because I know as a culture they're a little bit trippy, because I'm at even places like, Tbilisi being the good example of it. They're extremely conservative and religious, but then they have this incredible, really thriving, bubbling sort of scene of this LGBTQ kind of, techno dance scene and whatnot, that's kind of blowing up there on the sly, on top of all this flipping crazy conservatism and religiousness that they have going on there. So I'd imagine with that alone, that it would somehow lead to maybe some interesting food options just from that. And of course, where it's at in Europe, it's basically landlocked, surrounded by loads of really cool, vibrant countries that I think have really cool cuisine. So that probably is going to seep in there. But from what I remember of visiting places close to Georgia, places like Czech Republic, for instance, like, the food was a little bit, the Prague, it's just meat and potatoes. After a while, it can get a bit boring. But what do I know? But yeah, I wish gentrification would just be a little bit more imaginative. If you're going to gentrify a place, especially after all these cool, interesting people have come along and basically made a place that was overlooked and people didn't care about, cool and interesting and fun to hang out in, at least offer something imaginative when it comes to gentrifying the area. Don't just turn it into another district of glass and aluminium and steel crazy contraptions. We've seen it all before. These soulless coffee shops, with these big glass windows and these big glass doors, and these soulless bike shops and local flipping, vegetable shops and whatnot. They trying to make it feel like it's an organic, fucking homemade business type of vibe. It's just annoying. Like, at least have some sort of half and half, and you never get that usually. You never get these gentrified, which is really strange. I never understood that. Like, I understand coming in and maybe seeing an opportunity to make some money. because that's basically what the point of it is. I get it. But wouldn't you want to increase your chances of making money by somehow working in conjunction with the people who help to make that place popping? So maybe, putting together some sort of coalition or some sort of partnership that would allow you to keep the main spots of that area popping and opening, whilst you build in and around it all your shiny glass, ugly contraptions. So you have this nice sort of marriage going on. But I feel like sometimes, for the most part, they'll just leave one place there that was there before the gentrifiers got there, build around it all these amazing, all these horrible, nondescript copy and paste steel and glass contraptions in terms of buildings. These new people will move in there knowing nothing about the area, just seeing it as a cool place. They'll get annoyed at the people who were there beforehand because they're making too much noise, and then because they are paying way more rent and they obviously have a lot more to kind of lose in that kind of case, they'll then kind of get those people kicked out. But I feel like if you kind of leave them in the kind of group, if you kind of have more than 2 or 3 places there that were there before, it kind of helps to help them band together. But again, I don't know much. It continues the article, but unlike most other shuttered clubs, Printworks potentially coming back. Just before a surprise headline set from Bicep on Monday night's closing, the venue's operator Bordeaux Live announced the provisional deal with British Land for a revamped Printworks to reopen and develop the site on 2026. Now again, I like Bordeaux Live, but I'm going to call flipping gas on this. They definitely knew this was happening from the time that they announced the final shows. I don't believe that this is just something they found out on. They've been honey-dicking and stringing along this closing like nothing you've seen before. This reminds me of when flipping Sports Direct here in the UK, this flipping chain of crappy sports shops that sells like Lonsdale and all these sort of brands in there that flipping guys who beat their wives and chuck their kids out a window sort of wear. They kind of strung along their closing for time after time. They'd have these massive signs that said closing down sale, everything must go, and it went on for fucking years, right, until they finally got into administration, bankruptcy, and now they're sort of bleeding a slow death and the places are closing little by little. But I feel like Bordeaux Live did the same thing with Printworks. They knew for the longest time that the final date that they announced, when it was the final date when I went to see Dixon play that time, wasn't the final date. Then it got more dates on. Then I'm sure that they knew about this whole 2026 potential plan from ages ago, but they didn't want to announce it. So they kind of made everyone think that this is the final date to kind of squeeze, more ticket sales out of people, which I can't be mad at, but it's a little bit of a filthy game. But hey, it is what it is. It continues here. Simon Aldred, the co-owner and head of strategy at Bordeaux Live, says he's heard of a lot of classic gentrifications narrative the last few weeks. Terrible landlords closing you down, those kinds of negative vibes. But to be honest, British Land invited us in and was much as Printworks as much as their idea as it was ours. So I want to give them some credit for that. We can't announce that reopening is definitely happening. We haven't signed any contracts, but the shape of the principles for a deal are there, and we're going to be putting something in for planning permission in the next few weeks. That is absolutely incredible to hear. This includes, so the article continues, this includes Printworks' cavernous main hall being retained in something like its original form. Aldred says he has architectural mock-ups which he could show me, but for his insistence on sharing them with local community groups around Candlewater before making them public. Now, my main issue with Printworks has always been the sound. I think visually the place is fantastic. The clue is in the name. Printworks is a former print factory, and the way it kind of set up, and the kind of structure in terms of it being a rectangular shape, kind of going really long down, is kind of amazing. I don't think visually I've seen any other space like that. Usually clubs are kind of in a in a somewhat of a square shape for the most part, or a circle, but you don't really see rectangular clubs really for the most part. So the way that kind of shaped and everything is crazy. But when I went there last, maybe again I was spoiled because I think I just had come back from Berlin, so I kind of went to a city that kind of credits and kind of pins their hat on having amazing sound in just random pubs and bars, have great sound systems. So maybe I got spoiled, but I remember stepping into Printworks thinking, why does it sound so low? And then of course it ramped up over time, but you had to get really close to the front to hear the sound. It didn't really pick up the way, it didn't really kind of hit you the way you kind of thought it would hit you, because you walk into this massive site. Again, Printworks is a huge site, massive. They've got flipping food courts there, they've got loads of toilets, they've got 1,000 bars with many attentive and great bubbly bartenders. Legitimately, like, everyone that works there is flipping is amazing, apart from the security who are fucking annoying and they probably touch you up too much. Everyone else is flipping a star there, right? Great place, amazing. Loads of different rooms everywhere that you can kind of lose yourself in. So you kind of walk into it thinking you're going to be met with this wall of sound, right? It's going to be hitting you from all over the place. It's going to be dizzying, you know, flipping. It's going to take you on this wild ride. And then what you end up hearing is like, nah. You know, it's just, the sound is just at the front. You have to walk right to the front to hear the sound. And by the time you do hear the sound right at the front, it's too busy, too hot and sweaty for me up there. I want to have some room to dance. I want to see what I'm kind of experiencing in real time. I don't want to be surrounded by people that always have their phones up in the air right around the front. So it gets a little bit off-putting. But structurally, I think it's absolutely amazing. Structurally, I absolutely love it. Structurally, I flipping love it. It continues here. It says, club promoters and property developers, it's fair to say, do not normally make much of the amicable bedfellows. Printworks reopening in 2017 followed a decade in which the UK lost half of its nightclubs. The London, over a third of its grassroots music spaces in many cases, because the buildings they occupied were sold off or redeveloped. Boardwalk Live business model has flipped that conflict on its head. By teaming up with developers rather than opposing them, they've been able to operate a succession of cultural venues on a meanwhile basis. In the gap between the site, between a site being acquired by developers and bulldozers moving in, is a symbiotic exchange. Dancers get temporary access to otherwise impossible spaces, while the cultural capital they bring with them helps to lay the groundwork for surrounding areas' eventual redevelopment. I've got two issues with this, right? Two issues. One issue is this. One issue is that I feel like there has to come a point where Boardwalk Live puts their money where their mouth is and puts their skin in the game for real and just opens up their own club, because they've probably done enough work now. They've got enough sort of, you know, insights and whatever it may be from all these different events and temporary spaces they've occupied, that they could probably open up a space right now, a club right now, and it would legitimately be one of the best clubs in London, or maybe even the world, if they wanted to do so. And I'd love to see that, because I feel like this sort of like property guardianship sort of thing they've got going on, where they essentially occupy these spaces, you know, on a temporary basis, you know, before they're going to get bulldozed down, and it kind of gives the property developers an opportunity to make some money on the side easily, to see how viable it is for whatever property they're looking to build and whatnot. And it also gives a chance for a promoter to probably put on some more, you know, some more risk worthy kind of events and whatnot, and big books and bigger acts. I would like to see something a little bit more permanent. That would be pretty good to go with. But on the other side of things, I think to myself, maybe this actually is the only way to operate. Unless you're like a legacy club that's been around for a while, it's really difficult, or you spring up in an area that was really overlooked and underdeveloped, like a Canning Town and East London, where kind of I'm from, right, in terms where kind of Fold is. That was an area that was kind of neglected for the most part by the scene, and when Fold popped up there, they basically, I think, were able to kind of spring up at a time when no one kind of expected the club to be there, and maybe take advantage of the fact that there weren't things in place in that sort of borough in Newham that would prevent them from opening a space like that. Maybe now it's maybe a little bit more difficult. Who knows? I'm not really involved in that sort of stuff. I have no knowledge of it, but I feel like I would love to see Boardwalk Live open up their own space. That's what I want to see going forward. I think that's going to be sick to see. It continues here, says, this approach has been widely successful, at least financially. Boardwalk's endeavours with Printworks have seen around 200 million of investment flooding in from developers across the UK, along the injections of capital from Grand Theft Auto makers Rockstar Games. With that backing, Boardwalk has amassed a portfolio of more than 25 venues across the country, from the 10,000 capacity Depot Mayfield in Manchester to the Warehouse Project to a new venture, Beams, in East London, in London's Royal Docks. It has also, as anyone who visited Printworks in the last 3 years can attest, created spectacles of unparalleled scale and excellence, with dance music fans treated to consistently stacked lineups, pummeling sounds, and dizzying visuals. In particular, the venue's thin, vertiginous main room, with a 3-story video screen placed behind the stage and spotlights dancing vertical layers of exposed metal concrete, feels like clubbing redesigned for the TikTok age. As Rosie Murphy shimmies her way through the Amapiano tinged re-edit of Sing It Back on Monday's closing nights, countless dancers around me hold their phones up portrait style to capture a moment. Yeah, for sure. That's one thing they did really well. I feel like they created for sure one of the best social media friendly clubs that I've seen in London or in the UK for a very, very long time. Just the way it's designed, the fact that it's all basically portrait, it looks amazing when you're filming it like that, especially if you're standing towards the back. You can see the entire length of the flipping club from the back as you're doing it, people's phones in the air, the lighting and stuff. It really kind of captivates and adds to it. So as much as I love the whole no photos policy in places like Berlin and whatnot and other places around Europe, sometimes, especially if you're in a place like the UK where you have limited opening hours, you kind of need people. Right, to kind of spread the word of mouth style, and film loads of videos and share them on social media. It kind of helps. As much as they may annoy you, these pages that share these clips of these cute girls in these kind of brightly colored clothes and whatnot, dancing around in places, I'm sure some of these venues will tell you that those clips of those girls dancing in these places has helped and added to more usually thirsty dudes decide to go there because they hope that girl or those people are going to be there. I'm sure this is a thing. I'm sure it is. So you can only imagine what it may do to a club like Printworks, where they invest so much money into the flipping lighting and all the malarkey, the screens, that it must really, really help and add to the whole entire experience. It says here, what's proved trickier, it seems, is ensuring that these spaces endure beyond a 15-second social media high or developer-imposed cycles of demolition and reconstruction. The quote, "We always knew it was going to be an experiment," says Aldred, "but as soon as it started getting successful, we started talking to British Land about what the future might be. This was clearly not a straightforward conversation. When plans were submitted to Southwark Council in 2021, the provision of the cultural space akin to Printworks was notably absent. When the venue's attended closure was announced in 2022, Aldred and Baldrick had a bite their tongue as angry tweets rolled in, safe Printwork petition circulated, unable to reveal that they were already engaged in a high sensitive behind the scenes talk for the return of the same form. So while they're getting all that criticism, they're working in a deal behind the scenes. It's hilarious. To be fair, you can't blame Baldrick Live for the closing of Printworks. I think they always knew it was going to be temporary. I think clubbers or people that go to clubs like myself, however you kind of describe yourself, you probably forgot, and I know I did, that it was going to be a temporary space. You just kind of didn't really keep in mind. But it was always going to be temporary, and I think maybe because they did so well, people just thought they were going to hang around. I think that's what should happen. If you're going to hold these temporary spaces and be these de facto property guardians, there should be a potential, if you do well, that you get to keep the space. And maybe they get to build around it, especially if they're building the entire, because if I'm not mistaken, that whole site is huge. So if they're building on the entire site, they can leave the flipping Printworks to, to flipping the actual space, club space itself. Like, leave that to the club, because it's legitimately I think a cultural icon. It's become like a cultural icon, a place to visit for sure, monument in some respects. So why not leave it there? Like, increase tourism in some. I don't know. I don't get it. It says here British Land has responsibility to redevelop the whole site. So what they can't do, to be fair to them, is just preserve the massive sacred cow for me and our narrow audience. They have a job to do. Of course they have a job to do, but also if things change, you want to make some money. I don't know, get in partnership with them, do something. Come on, man. So what that audience might look like when Printworks hopefully reopens in 2026 is another question. True. Those who go clubbing to escape or defy the ceaseless pull of global capitalism might already find Printworks a little bit too sanitized for their taste. Around it with a glossy utopia of luxury flats, boutique hotels and exclusive eateries, the people who feel invited or excluded from the party are bound to shift even further. That's the thing though. I feel like nowadays we understand, and I know I do now, I kind of understand the appeal of these big mega spaces, because sometimes it is nice to see a really polished, well put together show from the elite DJs and producers out there on the scene. It's all well and good going to warehouse events and startup quote unquote events in smaller spaces by smaller kind of promotion arms and collectives and whatnot and friends of friends. That's all cool to see. But from time to time, I also think it's important to go and see the best of the best, especially if you're involved in the music. It's good to kind of get inspired by seeing guys like Solomon, by seeing guys like Bicep, even the Peggy Goo, who I don't really rate as a flipping DJ or whatnot, but still in terms of a production and where the spaces she's going to play, they're going to be playing in these big spaces. It's probably important to go and see them there also. Legitimately, it's important. Yo, big up my guy Jarvis. Yes, big up. So it's important to see these people in these spaces. So I feel like now more than ever, people are more open to go to these big spaces because they know it's going to be something different than what they used to going to their kind of quote unquote smaller clubs. You can be a fan of Fold, you can be a fan of Corsica Studios and all these places, and still be fans of Fabric and the Printworks. So I think they kind of go hand in hand, right? They're all part of the same sort of space, same sort of ecosystem. In my humble opinion, I think that is the case, and I think going forward, especially towards the end, Printworks were inviting in a lot of those what I could deem them to be alternative promotion arms, like the Howls and what's it called, the few other LGBTQ plus kind of scene people, and bring them into that space. It only kind of adds to the overall kind of flavor, texture, tapestry of these sort of places. So it all kind of works hand in hand. And then this quote here, this last paragraph, that I move on, it says, there are probably people who are more radical than us around dance music, says Aldred, not into the growing trend of sex positive clubbing as one example. Would I do sex positive parties in our venues given our land of relationships? Probably not, because there are younger groups doing that really well already. It kind of a niche gaps, but we do take some of these people and amplify them and help them step up to a bigger spaces. Absolutely. So I like that, right? Maybe he's not going to do a flipping club verboten or whatnot in flipping Printworks. It really wouldn't make sense, but I do like that he's open to the idea, or they're open to the idea of platforming and kind of pushing the people that play in those places to also play in their spaces, so that they have the opportunity to kind of play on a bigger scale, maybe get their music and their sound to different people, maybe just their perspective on clubbing or whatnot, all that's out there. I think that's really, really important. So big up Broadwick Live in general, big up Simeon, is that how you say his name? Simeon Aldred, over there, sounding cool and obviously giving us some great insight there. And I'm hoping they do reopen in 2026, make some tweaks, hopefully up the volume a little bit, because personally, like I said, I think it's a little bit too low over there. But I'm happy to hear that one of our best clubs in London, and something that I feel like added a lot to the nightlife scene, is obviously going to be given a chance to kind of do what they did best over there. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully that happens. What people saying in the chat? What's all this talking start of a tutorial of teaching us to do wild hair like that? Keep your mind straight, not Hurley. CM, thanks for start over. What are you saying, Aryan Privilege? You're saying I should do a hair tutorial for people on my channel? Wowzers, brother, wowzers. I'm not too sure if people come here for hair tutorials, but I'm a man of the people. If people want to find out how I do my hair, then I'll be more than happy to flip in, let them know. Definitely let them know, because not much goes into this, brother. It hardly gets washed. I wake up in the morning, I move it around a bit, run it through some water when it needs to be done, and then I continue going on. Anyway, moving on quickly before we move on to the other stuff. Quick one, touch upon this regarding Man United's victory against Aston Villa over Sunday. Obviously, this is kind of old news now, but I just needed to kind of touch upon it because it needs to be touched upon. I was very happy with the performance overall. I feel like, for me personally, I feel like we had the game under some level of control. I don't feel like Aston Villa really kind of threatened us. I feel the stats of the game here, courtesy of Google, kind of proved that in terms of our overall shots. We had 14, Aston Villa had 7. We had 6 shots on target. They had 1. We had 58% possession overall. They had 42. And look at the passes. This is a big development and change in United under Erik ten Hag. We had 511 passes to Aston Villa's 370, which definitely shows that we are becoming more of a passing team. We're kind of building up from the back. Even though David De Gea isn't the greatest goalkeeper with the ball at his feet, he still kind of contributes and helps at that, and Erik ten Hag is still pushing the team to still be brave and take those decisions. And our pass accuracy was 84, and we had, compared to flipping Aston Villa's 78, which really goes to show that we, I think, had the game under some level of control. And of course, a big part of that was Bruno Fernandes. I feel like he's a player that a lot of people, myself included, kind of have a hard relationship with him. It's kind of, sometimes you think it's crap, sometimes you think it's awesome, but one thing you can't deny, his importance to the overall team is really crazy, and his versatility doesn't get spoken about too often, because if I'm not mistaken, against Aston Villa, he was mostly playing on the right hand side. He was basically playing as a de facto winger in a way, right? Holding that kind of flank and the shape. And I feel like he did fairly well. There were fairly many instances where I feel like he made a lot of runs inside the channels where Victor Lindelof, if he was braver, maybe trusted his passing more, should have played him in. But I thought he was fantastic. Speaking of Lindelof, also maybe one of his best games in United shirt as of recently. He's stepped up in a major way. I think we all knew Luke Shaw, has been a consummate kind of replacement in as a centre back, especially if Varane or flipping Martinez was injured. He's been amazing, really. I think Luke Shaw's been amazing. There's no way you can kind of deny that. But I think Lindelof has been the big surprise. Me, myself, I've always been a big hater of Lindelof. I feel like whenever Lindelof faced somebody, especially black strikers who were fast, athletic and aggressive, he would shit his pants. It kind of reminded me of the first couple of seasons of Vidic and how he used to be with fast and aggressive strikers. But over time, I felt like maybe nowadays we're getting to see that maybe Lindelof was never the problem. And maybe he kind of has his faults. I still think when it comes to physical duels, he kind of can get ragdolled a bit too much. But I think overall, when it comes to defending, the guy is really good, Victor Lindelof. Overall, he's definitely a worthy person to kind of slot in and fill in when needs be. I thought Malacia was absolutely amazing. He was like a terrier down that left back, Frank. I thought Jadon Sancho was a bit unlucky to get subbed personally. I feel like it becomes the easiest option to always sub Sancho off first because his form isn't the greatest. But I think he played fairly well this game going forward. And I thought Rashford, again, really strange game from Rashford. I didn't feel like Rashford contributed much to the game overall, but I feel like his presence and the potential of him sort of like catching Aston Villa sleeping, especially with these runs, especially with how high up their line was, it kind of was always kind of in the back of their fullbacks, their main defenders in Konsa and Mings' head. So even though Rashford didn't do much, his presence alone I feel like kind of made them scared and worried because of that pace behind the back. So bloody hell, man, interesting performance, happy with it overall. Another kind of win on the flipping list there. The points keep adding up, and now in a position where I feel like with a few more wins, maybe 2 more wins possibly, or maybe 3 if we're being really, really on it, because I think there's 6 games, 3 wins out of those 6 games, and we've got top 4 solidified, of course, but definitely try and push as far as we can to flipping 3rd. Personally, in my opinion, that's what I would love to see there. Personally. And of course, Casemiro, as Jarvis said here, our key players are picking up form. Casemiro and Eriksen are back to their best. Yeah, for sure. Casemiro is absolutely imperious. Definitely one of his better performances in a while. Same goes for Eriksen. Sabitzer still kind of making me a little bit nervous, but his energy and his willingness to kind of run up and down the pitch is really important. And of course, he's just far better on the ball and much more trustworthy than a Fred. So I get it, but I still would like a little bit more quality in that position overall. I feel like we just lose the ball too much with those players in the middle. It's just a bit too frantic for me. But what can we do? We can't do much with that. But the one thing that has been concerning, just to kind of close out the football section of the show, has been this talk of Jim Ratcliffe now becoming the highest bidder for Man United. He's not taking the biggest share of ownership, which is strange, but he is going to be the person who, so far, the press are relaying has had the highest bid, which is annoying because essentially if he goes into this takeover only wanting partial ownership and still giving Glazers a minority stake, that will mean essentially we will never get rid of the Glazers and they will always be involved in this club. And because they have, I forgot what it is, I think it's Class A, Class B, I forgot what the actual name of it is. It basically would mean they have a lot more kind of rights and kind of opinion and say so in how the club gets run. So any sort of aspirations Ratcliffe would have to sort of oust them is not going to really be there. Of course, most people could kind of guess this is a tactic probably by the Glazers to just get more money, because if they sell, for instance, if they're able to kind of sell to Jim Ratcliffe, 60%, 70% of the company, but still maintain 30% of it, that means that they can later sell on that 30% for far more. So they can collect 5 billion, let's say, right, for 70%, and then still sell on the other 30% for another amount of money. So essentially they can look at a return of 10 billion, which is pretty crazy, which they're obviously not going to get from anyone else who's bidding for the club at the moment. But personally speaking, selfishly, I want the club to be sold outright. If it's a Qatari base, I don't care who it is, I want the club to be sold outright. I want it to go to an ownership who cares about winning trophies and who's going to be willing to invest into the club in terms of a new training ground and a new stadium. I feel like at the moment now, if Ratcliffe is having to pull loads of people to put together the 5 billion, he doesn't have enough to buy the whole thing. Like, where would the money come from in terms of redevelopment of the club? It just doesn't make any sense in that regard. So all those things are a bit crazy. And again, you know, him being a lifelong United fan and then willingly getting to bed and business with the Glazers, knowing how terrible they've been for our club over the last 20 years, despite Sir Alex Ferguson winning trophies. Because I always say Alex Ferguson was able to win trophies at United, right, because he's brilliant, not because of the Glazers, right? So if that's the case, then I'm disappointed in Ratcliffe too, because that whole spin and that whole propaganda that he's a lifelong United fan was all gas, because no lifelong United fan would ever get in business with the Glazers ever, because they've been, you know, for lack of a better term, cancerous. They've legitimately ruined this club that we all love, and I'm one of the fans who have been, you know, forever scarred by their ownership, to the point where I haven't bought a jersey in years, right? I haven't bought a official piece of club merch in donkey years, because I don't want to be supporting the club in any way, shape or form and putting money in the Glazers' pockets. I refuse. So I'd rather buy my shirts from flipping China than give these guys any money. But even though still those shirts from China, the reps and the copies still end up getting money back to the club in some weird way, but we won't even go down that route. This is a courtesy first. This is an article, sorry, courtesy of the Telegraph, that says Sir Jim Ratcliffe makes highest bid for Man United as offer tops 5 billion. It says here the battle for control of Man United has taken another twist, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe Ineos thought to be valued the club higher than the main Qatari rivals, but that's only valuing it higher because he's taking less of an ownership percentage, right? It's not really a higher offer. It's a bit mad. It continues. Third and final bids for United were submitted before Friday's 10 p.m. deadline as the 6-month saga edges closer to conclusion. Sheikh Jasmine bin Hamad Al Talin, the chairman of Qatar Islamic Bank and son of former Qatar Prime Minister, has been a favourite to land the club, but it emerged on Saturday that Ineos were the only bidder to have valued the club above 5 billion. Their proposal equates to more than offer represented by Qatar, but again, this is misleading because it's valued above because they're only taking a smaller amount. The Sheikh Jasmine is the only bidder offering to buy the club 100% of the club and debt-free takeover. Ineos want to purchase the Glazers' 69% shareholding, but are also understood to have made a proposal that would see them take a controlling stake but allow Joe and Avram Glazers, right, two of the most heinous owners in football flipping history, the co-chairman, to remain as minority stakeholder, which I hate. It is thought that the preferred bidder will be granted a period of exclusivity over the next few days to 10 days. Sources close to Sheikh Jasmine camp are adamant that they offer the additional capital investment to fund the redevelopment of Old Trafford, and the club's training ground is up to the bid of the Glazers and have been used by the suggestion of the contrary. The funny thing about it, I've read so far, there's another kind of journalist who I follow on Twitter, who mentioned that something interesting, like the Glazers, when they decide to sell, Qatar will buy the whole club outright. So it's looking like, for the most part, Glazers never wanted to sell. And I think we kind of all knew, actual United fans who've been paying attention, I think could kind of tell. The Glazers never wanted to sell the club. I don't think so. I think what they wanted was always to get a bit of reinvestment into the club, because they didn't want to put any of their own money in there. But they would much rather someone come in and take a minority stake in the club, give them loads of money, maybe kind of overspend, overinvest, because they want to have ownership of the club and whatever it may be, and whatever prestige that comes along with it, or maybe the potential of owning it outright. But they still maintain the majority ownership of it, which allowed them to keep on making money and not really be involved in that regard. So I think that's what they wanted. But then over time, things change. But I think what they wanted was for the Qatar-based consortium, wherever it may be, to come in and really kind of overvalue the club and give them some crazy offer like 7, 6, 8 billion, maybe even 10 billion. And then they would have taken it. But now that people are haggling, and the Qatar, based firm are saying, hey, we're not going to overpay for this, they're not on it. Do you know what I mean? So they're kind of making their mind up and saying, we'd rather kind of sit here, take all the protests, because they've been able to kind of weather the protests and everything for a long time now. So they're definitely not scared about the bad press. But it kind of feels like this is all sort of a scheme, right, to kind of garner attention, to kind of get interesting parties attention overall, and to kind of see what the temperature was like out there. And now they've seen it. So maybe there is a possibility after all of this stuff, United doesn't get sold. That's a strong possibility. I think United fans need to really sort of like prepare themselves. And me, myself, I'm speaking to myself also. You need to prepare yourself, mentally, physically, in any way, shape, or possible to make sure that you're ready, because potentially the club won't get sold. Potentially the Glazers are just going to run this whole ruse to garner attention, to see what the temperature's like, and then decide not to sell right now and wait for new bidders to come along down the line. That could honestly happen, because this is looking crazy, because it's taken a long time to sell the club. Any plans for the summer transfer window are going to have to be rushed. You know, any plans to, you know, sell players, sign players on, any changes to the, you know, academy, train, all this stuff are going to be affected by how long this, you know, protracted flipping sale is taking. So it leads me to believe that maybe it's not what it all kind of seems out there. It's not all it kind of seems out there. But anyway, we'll hope, we'll see. Fingers crossed. I'm wishing for the best. I am honestly wishing for the best. What people are saying in the chat here quickly before I continue on. Natasha Ski is saying rugby is so dangerous. If you play, you're basically asking to break a rib and or tear your ACL. Yep, for sure. I always wanted to play rugby actually, but I was too much of a PUSSY. REM privileges. I had fleed the UK as mistakenly always a talker, baby Beckham. Don't know, man. Okay, I don't know what that is. REM privilege. Oh, I think he's talking about Beckham there. Louis Shire says nope, an American billionaire. Travis Cocker said the Glazers are Ratcliffe is about to ruin the club even more, and there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, that's always been part of the reason why I think I've been able to kind of deal with politics in a somewhat mature way, because I feel like all these years, because I've grown up entirely supporting United under the Glazer ownership, so I've known nothing else but these heinous, horrible kind of vermin-like owners who have bled my club dry, and who have basically, you know, halted our progress and put into the position that we're in now. And I felt like, for me, you know, the green and gold, the protests, the scarves, the chanting, the, you know, the protests outside, the mini walkouts, the infighting, all that stuff I thought would have eventually pressured them to sell. But they weathered every single storm, and it just kept on hanging on to the fucking club. Look how long it took for us to get rid of fucking Ed Woodward, right? One of the most inept, incompetent flipping CEOs in football history. And he hung on to that job for dear life. And some people would even say, some people would go as far as saying he's probably still receiving a salary from the Glazers in some way, shape or form in the advisory role till this day now, right? But it took a long time for us to get rid of him. Even install a director of football, which we still haven't technically installed, you know, whatever. Who knows? But I think my inability to affect change in the club, despite me knowing the owners are terrible and every other fan out there knowing it's terrible, made me realize how useless it is to get kind of hot and bothered about stuff going on in politics. Unless you're involving yourself in local politics, I feel like, you know, for the most part, you shouldn't concern yourself with the stuff happening in the White House, in the House of Parliament, because you have little to no effect to what's going on in there day to day. Zero, in my opinion. And I feel like my hopelessness in terms of, you know, helping the club to maybe get sold to some better owners really made me kind of realize that. Like, so in some ways, I should maybe thank the Glazers for making me realize just how insignificant I am in the grand scheme of things. So, you know, I try not to let it affect my mental health, man. So just try and kind of, you know, get myself somewhat situated. That's what you can do. That's all you can hope to do. Anyway, moving on from that, quickly want to talk about this. So it looks like my guy Frank Ocean is going around and flipping slapping small YouTubers with cease and desist and basically copyright strikes because they're uploading clips on the Coachella performance. Honestly, this guy might be one of the worst people to ever exist out there in culture, especially in the music shape of things, because he genuinely hates his fans. Like for real hates his fans. So most of you know Frank Ocean had a horrible performance over there at Coachella. He kind of honeyed it the fans. It was a big sort of, you know, welcome back to the scene, welcome back to the live circuit type of thing for Frank Ocean, because he'd been MIA for a very long time for various reasons that we won't get into. But essentially this big Coachella performance, everybody was really looking forward to. Oh my God, Frank Ocean is back. He's back. He finally goes and performs. He turns up, number one, looking like he just rolled out of bed. The performance itself, overall production-wise, was a little bit lackluster. There was last-minute changes. It felt like he went to cancel last minute. And when he finally gets on stage, it's kind of a mix between a DJ set, and these kind of live renditions of tracks that people wanted to hear, just sung the quote unquote conventional way that he wanted to do in a really different way. And then when it came to doing the second week, he then decided, nah, I'm not doing a second week, and dropped out that last minute. And on top of that, he decided, against the kind of recommendation of everybody else, that he wasn't going to live stream his set. So the one guy who's incredibly recluse, doesn't like to engage with his fan base at all, and would be coming back to perform live again after many years out, refused to live stream his set, despite everybody else that performed at Coachella streaming their set live on the channel. Maybe not, you couldn't watch it maybe all in full on the channel after the fact, but you could watch it in the moment. And everyone did it, from the Bad Bunnies to the Linkin Parks. Everybody allowed Coachella to stream their set live, apart from Frank Ocean. So what did the fans do? The fans that love Frank Ocean, the fans that are flipping diehard Frank Ocean flipping stans, decided to go to flipping Coachella and live stream his performance. Some fans were standing there watching him perform for an hour and 20 minutes, or however long it was, holding their phone in the air with their charge pack in their pocket, trying their best to stream a flipping performance of somebody at a festival. And again, if you've been to a festival, you know how shoddy the reception is in festivals. Doesn't matter where you are. And some of them were able to stream these performances on Instagram Live, on other platforms. It may be some of them recorded the whole things on their phone, taking up memory, holding their hand in the air, just so they can allow other fans who weren't there to experience it and to kind of share in the joy of seeing Frank Ocean back on stage. What does Frank Ocean do? Instead of maybe leaving that kind of as it is, it's a one-off performance. You're never going to revisit it again. Maybe there's an A24 movie coming out, who knows? But most of the footage is kind of janky. There's some good ones here and there, but essentially it's people recording him performing on stage with their flipping phone, feeding through the phone speaker. The sound's going to be shit. The videos aren't going to be that great. Whatever, right? Just leave as it is. No. He decides, as you can see via this screenshot taken from a YouTuber that goes by Carl, who uploaded quite a few performances or clips of Frank Ocean performing, and a lot of them got a lot of views, and they just generally, were very well received. People got to see what he kind of sounded like on stage, what the visuals were like, and kind of got an impression of what the show was like overall. Frank has gone down and basically decided to slap this channel with copy strikes to the point where the channel's now been disabled. This is a screenshot taken from an email that was sent to this YouTuber called Carl, and it says, due to multiple copyright strikes associated with the videos below, your YouTube account has now been disabled. Frank is getting Frank is getting his own fans' YouTube channel strucken down and disabled because they dare to upload clips of him performing at Coachella. Legitimately incredible how much flipping disdain he has for his fans. Absolutely incredible. I get artistically maybe not wanting your show to be live streamed by Coachella because you want to have it filmed a certain way. I mentioned A24 before because some fans were speculating that Frank, I think maybe previously had been announced that he signed a deal with A24 and they were going to put together some sort of live performance thing, and that most likely he was filming it himself with his own cameras because there were some cameras on stage there, and maybe those cameras were what they were going to use for the footage that was going to be sold as a DVD, which is really heinous. Everyone performed live, but Frank was just going to record his, not have it live streamed, and then sell it to his fans. It's incredible, and most likely the physical version of it won't ship for like 17 weeks, right? Crazy guy. But regardless, you just think he would kind of, as a give back to his fans, be like, you know what, I appreciate you guys, and I fucked up, I wasn't in the mood, so here's this, do what you want with the clips, kind of like have a kind of a hands-off approach on it. But nah, he's getting channels taken down. It's not even like he's trying to get all the kind of all the AdSense from it. No, he's getting the videos removed from YouTube. He's getting channels disabled. Whole crazy thing. But it made me think about a couple of stories I've seen online, and one specifically from Erykah Badu, where I think she said something like, oh, I think I saw Frank Ocean in the car park after Coachella skateboarding, right? And this, I think, was after his first performance. The same performance that his team came out and said, oh, Frank Ocean broke his ankle, that's why he couldn't perform well, right? And Erykah Badu said he was skateboarding, and he was like, I think she said something in the caption, skateboarding with not a care in the world. So that's what he was doing, right? Skateboarding with not a care in the flipping world, right? And then, of course, I'm hearing accounts from other people who were there who were saying that behind the scenes in the VIP area, Frank was just chill. hanging out, having a good time, not bothered, and just chilling. Like legitimately after that first performance where he just did shit, he was at the back and people were saying that he legitimately, you couldn't tell that he had a shit performance because he just didn't care. And I've generally thought that anyway. And I don't think it comes from malice. I just think he's just that kind of personality. And I think maybe that's what his fans kind of like. This sort of like disdain and detachment from the real world is what the fans like, because he is kind of rare in that sort of space. He never explains himself. Because a lot of these kind of controversial artists that are like this, who kind of have a weird relationship with their fans, they sometimes can be a bit combative with their fans online. They can maybe ridicule them, say things in press conferences or in interviews, and just generally kind of be a bit of a, shit stirrer. But this guy doesn't do that. Frank hardly speaks, if ever. The only time we've heard him speak is maybe on stage or on little skits and interludes on these tracks and whatnot, or via some warped text on a magazine. But he never really speaks. So he does what he does, he moves how he moves, and he doesn't say a word. And that's boss, because all these fans crying and complaining, myself included, if he decides to do a flipping one-off set somewhere, amazing, we're all going to be there. We're all going to buy tickets. I know I will. So we're all kind of full of shit, really. But I quickly want to play this clip here. This features Frank Ocean solo at Coachella that features some footage of it. And again, for me, it was a reminder that there was potential in this show, of this performance. I feel like if he actually cared, he could have delivered a good show, because visually I think this is pretty impressive the way he did it, where he had all these hardware pieces installed around the stage, and I think there was meant to be a flipping ice rink there and whatnot, but just from what we can see here on the screen, we've got this amazing kind of really wide screen here, 3 screens put together to create this really massive long rectangular shape of a screen, and then essentially all these cameramen around taking these close-up video footage of these guys on the machines and whatnot, or these pieces of hardware, these really analog sort of like tactile pieces of music equipment, and they're all zooming into it, and those are popping up on the screen, and video clips of flipping Frank singing. I feel that kind of level of performance, it kind of helps to make it, even though Frank, even though flipping Coachella is a really commercial event, it kind of helps to make it feel warm, kind of helps to make it feel small, tight, intimate. It's really interesting. But anyway, this is a clip, Frank Ocean performing solo at Coachella. Hopefully I don't get taken off YouTube because of this. Come on, Frank, do me a solid. BLM, come on.
We're not. Wait. No, that's not the one. No, it is.
Hey, tell them dirty things about myself, gone off time. But I asked for me a circle, watch my jacket. I lose my jacket, head solo.
Let's keep stopping. God almighty. Let's start again one more time. It keeps flipping stopping for some reason. Maybe because my computer's being a bit weird. But let's just refresh this screen one more time, because I want this to play all the way through and hear some of this Frank Ocean goodness performing solo at Coachella. Give me a moment as it refreshes here in the background, and we're going to get this going up again. Let's go. Come on. Work for me, work for me, work for me, work for me, work for me. Okay, it's loading now. It should be working in 2 seconds. Here we go. Here we go. There we go. Come on, brother. There you go.
We're not. Wait. No, that's not the one. No, it is the one.
Hey, tell them dirty things about myself, gone off time. But I asked for me a circle, watch my jacket. I lose my jacket, head solo, one time. We too loud in public, then police turn down the function. I'll be outside, your time is perfect. I can tell you how much I vibe with you. We don't gotta be so low. I stay away from highways, my eyes like the red lights. Right now, I'm very yellow, red bone, so mellow, fuck around, be cutting you. Think we were better off alone. I got the ass right in the windy city at night. No trees to blow through, but blow me. I know you, 2 grand for the sunrise. So, rolling so low, so low, so low, so low.
But you can't deny, if that was actually done well, the show would have been fucking amazing. But he didn't care. He just turned up, went through the motions, barely sung, and it went shit. And he had that DJ playing as well that kind of ruined it, whatever it may be. But if Frank actually wanted to put on a fucking performance, he could have smashed it to pieces, legit. If he imagine him doing 5 dates or 5 shows of this, right, in a row, these intimate type of shows with this screen there, with these amazing stints on the flipping stage and whatnot, it'd be amazing, right? Just imagine how amazing it'd be, but he chooses not to, which is really funny. Like, he could do amazing, he could feed his fans, but he's like, nah, fuck the fans. Fuck them. I do what I want. I do what I want when I want. You kind of have to respect it. You really do have to respect it. In this era that we live in at the moment, where everyone's kind of falling over themselves, myself included, to sort of appease and satisfy their audience, there's these elite level flipping artists and creative out there who really influence culture in a really meaningful way, who are basically the favorites of some of your favorites, who really move to the beat of their own drum. People say that a lot. It's a kind of overused term, but Frank for sure moves to the beat of his own drum. And if he's not feeling it, he's not feeling it. Doesn't care if he's getting paid. And that's the thing sometimes about him as well that I kind of have to appreciate. He got paid a lot of money. Allegedly, they're saying it's anywhere between like 1 million and 4 million. Obviously, if you're Coachella and you're smart enough, the people that probably put that show together, there's something involves your contract, especially with it being 2 weekends, where if you don't show up to the second weekend, you don't get the second half of your payment. So I'm sure whatever, millions you're meant to get, he'll probably get half because you only performed for 1 weekend. Fair. But it clearly shows Frank Ocean can't be bought. He cannot be bought. Doesn't matter how much money you offer him. If he's not in the mood, he's not going to do it. And Coachella was probably the biggest, example of it. Like the most commercial example of it. Like they pay money, they pay well, I'd assume. It's in LA. You'd imagine all his fans, if there's one place you'd imagine Frank Ocean's fans would be, it's LA. And he still was like, nah, I'm cool. I'm good, love, enjoy, on some Frank Ocean tip. I have to rate it. It's impossible not to rate that. Anyway, moving on from that one, quick one to mention this. This is courtesy of Variety, which I'm really happy about, I have to be honest. This says James Corden's farewell includes a duet with Tom Cruise and parting messages to the US. Remember what America signifies. Go fuck yourself. But essentially, the headline here from Deadline is the main one. James Corden leaving the Late Late Show in 2023. So this fat fuck, this annoying flipping guy who I think dumbed down what it means to be a late night TV host for everybody out there, is now leaving, I feel like, one of the worst shows to ever exist out there in 2023. And for the most part, it feels like this is a consequence in some respect relating a little bit to this infamous Keith McNally expose. Right, Keith McNally, the famous restaurateur who exposed James Corden, right? I think he was the first prominent person in kind of, in the entertainment industry adjacent to basically mention aloud that James Corden's a bit of a piece of shit. I think if you're on Reddit and whatnot, you would have seen random posts. I forgot what the subreddit is, but there's a particular subreddit where they speak about meeting famous people and they share kind of the experiences. And I think there's a thread about who's the worst person, and a consistent offender in one of those threads, to the point where I used to think some of it must be satire, was James Corden. There'll be random people saying, oh, I saw him at this restaurant, I saw him at this bar, I was on set with him, and they'll be talking about how awful of a person he was, which surprised me, because I don't know why. In my head, I've got this weird thing in my head where, because a person looks the way they look, like James Corden looks how he looks, right? He's somebody that's kind of easy to bully based on his laugh, his demeanor, his face, the way his body is shaped. You just think someone like this can't be rude, because essentially if you're rude and you're mean to people, they have so much nasty things they can say about you straight away. But I think over time I've started to learn that being a bully and being mean and being horrible to people isn't just kind of, a thing sort of reserved for people who look a certain way. Anybody can be mean and be a bully, and clearly James Corden was one. And this infamous expose post from Keith McNally on Instagram was the best. And if you know anything about Keith McNally, you know that he does these kind of, you know, posts where he kind of feature celebrities that maybe have come to his restaurants in the past, people that he's kind of known. And this post was funny because he took a very small image of, you know, flipping James Corden from Google. Instead of downloading the high quality version in a boomer way, he downloaded the smallest pixel version he could, blew it up so it's all pixelated, and then he added this caption. This is in October 17, 2022. So I legitimately think this was the beginning of the end of James Corden's flipping career on flipping TV and how he's perceived overall in media. Because this Keith Melody post, I think, kind of helped to kind of have people, you know, be aware of how much of a piece of shit he's being seen. So the quote here, or the caption from Keith McNally's Instagram back then about James Corden said the following: James Corden is a hugely gifted comedian, but a tiny cretin of a man, and the most abusive customer to my Balthazar servers since the restaurant opened 25 years ago. I don't often 86 a customer. Today I 86 Corden. It did not make me laugh. He didn't. But here are two examples of the funny man's treatment of my staff. Manager's report number 1. In June, James Corden was here at table 61, although this is diabolical. It happens very occasionally in all restaurants. After eating his main course, Corden showed the hair to Balthazar manager G, who was very apologetic. Corden was extremely nasty to G and said, "Get us another round of drinks this second. Also, take care of all our drinks so far. This way, I write any reviews on Yelp or anything like that." So James Corden is essentially a Karen. Imagine this. Imagine that, right? And usually people would say you can judge a lot about a person based on how they treat, you know, service workers, whether they be people that work in stores, a bartender, or somebody working in a restaurant as a waiter, whatever it may be. You can judge a lot about a person's character and how they are based on how they treat service industry people, which is probably a very interesting, good place to come to if you're gonna go on a date with somebody. It's kind of counterproductive, but it probably would be the best option if you're gonna go on a first date with somebody, to go out somewhere very public and very busy, to see how they interact with other people, invading their space, quote unquote, you know, delays in service, all this malarkey. Like, how did they kind of react to it, especially in your presence? Like, that's probably a better way to kind of judge a person and see if there's any red flags that you should be kind of aware of. Another one here, manager's report number 2. James Corden was at Balthazar with his wife in October the 9th. This to me is the worst one. He asked for a text, even though the first one's still kind of bad, right? He basically, you know, blackmailed them, or kind of, you know, in a way to give him drinks so he wouldn't write nasty review on Yelp. The fact that James Corden is a review on Yelp is hilarious also. But anyway, it continues. James Corden was at Balthazar with his wife on October 9th for brunch. He asked for a table outside. Brunch mate D, Ali Walters, took the party to table 301. Mr. Corden's wife ordered egg yolk omelette with a Gruyere cheese and salad. A few minutes after they received the food, Corden called their server MK and told her there was a little bit of egg white mixed with the egg yolk. Did you hear that? His complaint was about his wife, right? So he did the bitch made thing and was crying for his wife. He was complaining that there was a little bit of egg white mixed with the egg yolk. MK informed the floor manager G. The kitchen remade the dish, but they unfortunately sent it with some home fries instead of salad. So first of all, he's complaining about the egg yolks being in the bit of the egg white. Then he gets a dish remade with some home fries sent instead of a salad. But there's this, whatever, right? Mistakes happen, especially if you're sending back food all the time. It is what it is. That's when James Corden began yelling like crazy to the server, "You can't do your job. You can't do your job. Maybe I should go in the kitchen and cook an omelette myself." MK was very apologetic and brought G over to the table. He returned the dish, and after that, everything was fine. He gave them promo champagne glasses to smooth things out. G said that Corden was pleasant with him, but nasty to the server, which is horrible. That's even worse, right? Being nice to the manager because they're in charge and then treating the server like shit, which puts the manager in a shit position. Hate that also. Corden was pleasant with him, but nasty to the server. MK was very shaken but professional that she is continuing to finish her shift. So I think, personally, this sort of kind of added to the negative sentiment around James Corden. And I don't think he's ever recovered from this. He really hasn't recovered from this, I don't think, reputational wise. Now, in terms of ratings, this is a really strange thing to come from. I wonder, again, this is a weird one. How much damage do you think long form podcasting has done to shows like this? Because I don't watch TV anyway. So any clips I would have seen of the Late Late Show or Carpool Karaoke would have come from YouTube, would have come from social media or whatever it may be. But I haven't sat down and watched one of these shows in donkey years. I maybe watched it in the past, but I haven't before. So I wonder who is watching this stuff on like a weekly, weekend basis. Like who's legitimately sitting down tuning into stuff, especially if you're kind of going to have these people on there, because I think there's definitely some overlap between the guests that go on the Late Late Show to promote, a show they're on, a book they're releasing, documentary, whatever it may be. Most of those people will also go on podcasts that you listen to. Your favorite podcaster will definitely have a guest that goes on a Late Late Show on there. So what would you rather? Would you rather listen to them, sit down and have a really expansive, far-reaching, long-form interview with like a Joe Rogan for 3 hours plus? Or would you rather have them sit down with James Corden, this fat shit, squealing like an idiot, trying to be funny and not being funny for what, 20, 30 minutes, half an hour, in this really kind of chopped up weird way where they don't really get to say their piece and sort of canned answers? So I think, weirdly enough, podcasts have definitely sort of invaded into the space of live TV, especially these sort of like late night shows, because there's just not enough time in your day to listen and watch everything. I wish I could legitimately watch and listen to everything, but I honestly don't think that's possible. So maybe this is why these shows aren't working out. So as much as I think it's annoying, I reckon this probably has a lot more to do with outside forces, like, basically not a lot of people watching it, as opposed to him being a piece of shit. I think so. Anyway, read the article. Courtesy of Deadline. It said James Corden is prepared to say goodbye to the Late Late Show. The Brit has extended his contract for the CBS Late Night size for 1 year and will depart ahead of summer 2023. Corden will have hosted the Late Late Show for 8.5 years by the time he departs. A major achievement. It's been a really hard decision, he says here. To leave because I'm immensely proud of the show, according to Deadline. I'm thrilled to be extended for a year. It's always thought it'd do it for 5 years and then leave, and then I stayed on. I've really been thinking about it for a long time, thinking whether there might be one more adventure. It says here, Corden signed a contract to host the Late Late Show, which was hosted for 9 years by Craig Ferguson in 2014 and premiered on March 23rd, 2015. The Gavin and Stacey co-creator was somewhat of a surprise choice, but he reinvigorated a 12:30 a.m. time slot on CBS and breathed a new life into Late Night Show with viral segments such as Carpool Karaoke, Drop the Mic, Spill Your Guts, and Crosswalk Musical. In fact, Corden's Carpool Karaoke with Adele has been watched more than 250 million times on YouTube, while his journey with One Direction has racked up 189 million views. The Late Late Show YouTube page itself has already nearly 10 billion views and has more than 27 million subscribers, the second highest in late night history. CBS chiefs, including President and CEO George Cheeks and CBS President Kelly Kill, SVP programming, blah 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 blah, were keen to keep Corden and offered a variety of deals, including a 3-year extension, a 2-year extension, and a rolling 1-year extension before he made his decision. So they're saying that basically they went to keep him on board, but it was ultimately Corden's decision. I don't buy it personally. I don't buy it. I think if the ratings are good and the money's great, why would you leave a job like this? Do you know what I mean? It's basically making you rich beyond your wildest dreams. You get to clock in, clock out in a way. It doesn't really make sense, to be fair. So I'm not really buying this too much. But my bosses here at CBS have been incredibly supportive and extraordinarily patient with me while I made this decision. Corden added, 7 years ago, Corden came to CBS and took the television by storm with his huge creative and comedic swings that resonated in a big way with the viewers on air and online, from Crosswalk to the musical to legendary Carpool Karaoke and every unique comedy segment he introduced. He also has been a consummate network showman, entertaining audiences from the nightly perch of television as well as the Tony and Graham stage. So that's basically the end of it. Corden has left the Late Late Show. I'm actually pleased and happy about that. I'm not gonna lie. Long time coming. He's definitely I think a reflection of people's attention in general, and just the fact that people, well, I think when they find out you're a piece of shit and you have this bubbly, happy-go-lucky personality on screen, it's kind of hard for them to kind of connect with that anymore in the long term. I think so. But I could be completely wrong, and it all just could be his decision to kind of move and bet on himself, as many other famous and illustrious guests have done over the years, betting on themselves, isn't it? Betting on themselves. But anyway, moving on from that one. Moving on from that one. We need to talk about this because I feel like this is really, really, really interesting, and I feel like super surprising. So, this is courtesy of the Rolling Stone, and I'm wondering if the Rolling Stone is basically trying to occupy complex position of these nonsense listicle type articles that are basically done to kind of, you know, essentially create debate, create outrage, and get people talking. And why do I say this? Because of this recent article courtesy of Rolling Stone that's titled, the 20 most influential creators right now. From innovative vloggers to controversial streamers to bona fide TikTok stars, here are the people making a splash of the social media, right? Now, it says the 20 most influential. It doesn't say the top 20, but the way that they've done the list, it gives you the feeling that they're kind of rating them from 1 to 20, right? It kind of gives you that kind of feeling, which I know it's not, because I'm sure it's done in kind of alphabetical flipping order and whatnot, right? But it's pretty wild to see this name featured on there, which I just didn't understand, right? And it's this lady here called Amelia Dimoldenberg. How do you say her name? Dimoldenberg, who some of you may know from the Chicken Shop channel show thing that she does, and people just refer to her, myself included, as Chicken Shop Girl. Essentially, the premise of the show is pretty self-explanatory. She goes to a chicken shop and sits down with, you know, very well-known UK artists, and for a sit-down interview in the style of Hot Ones, where they share, you know, a meal of each other and get to know each other in a kind of satirical kind of, you know, way, with some jokes inserted here and there, whatnot. And usually people do it during their promo run. Now, for me personally, having grown up in, you know, some sketchier parts of London and whatnot, chicken shops are usually a bit of a meeting spot for a lot of people in ends to kind of hang out, chill out, you know, catch some LOLs, maybe run into a couple of lighties here and there, you know, wrangle a deal with the boss man. But in general, you know, you've kind of been to, if you've been to one kind of ends chicken shop, you've probably been to them all. For the most part, from my experience growing up, for the most part, I legitimately have not been to any chicken shop where I've kind of bumped into an Amelia looking girl on a regular. The last time I've been to a chicken shop where I've seen somebody like Amelia in there was a chicken shop maybe in like Hoxton or Shoreditch, back when I used to go around those areas. So for me, I never understood the premise of the show because it just wasn't congruent. If you're going to get her to do a show where she kind of is the awkward, quirky white girl interviewing the guys from ends, why not just have her do it being herself, which is already interesting. That kind of contrast of having this girl from a particular, you know, basically part of the world or particular socioeconomic level, interviewing these other people, artist wise, who come from completely different worlds. I think that kind of works, and just have them in just different places. It doesn't need to be a chicken shop. I just didn't get the idea of the chicken shop, like trying to sell it as like she enjoys going to chicken shops. It's like, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. You probably didn't grow up around them. You probably don't live around them anyway. So why was this attachment to chicken shop? It's just really bizarre. And then on top of that, with it becoming one of the kind of the biggest and maybe the #1 platforms to go on, it also kind of left a bit of a bad taste in the mouth to see somebody quite clearly Caucasian essentially dominating and crushing basically the scene in terms of being the #1 sort of like media platform to kind of interview these big stars here in the UK and maybe in far-flung places across the world in Europe and whatnot. It just left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Because you think to yourself, would this show have been successful if there was a black boy or girl on the show? Probably not, right? And that's the kind of sad reality of the situation. But what I'm getting at here is that I don't understand why they have her on the list, because I feel like you're doing this girl a disservice. I feel like as much as I don't enjoy the show and I feel like she's got, you know, the personality of a cardboard box, I still think some of the sticks she gets online is a bit excessive. But I feel like these things don't do her any favors. Like, why should she be on the list of the most influential people when I don't feel like the show is influential? She may be crushing it. Like I said, the show's crushing it. The views are amazing, right? The views are amazing. She's crushing it. People obviously like the show because they watch it. People obviously see the show as useful part of their media promotion because they advise their artists and their whatever people, their clients they represent to go on it. But no one can sit here, even the biggest fans of Chicken Shop, and say that this show is influential. It's not. I don't care what you say. You're lying. It's not influential. It's good, right? She's doing a good job, but influential is crazy to put it there as influential. And I feel like this creates unnecessary debate, and I feel like takes away from all the good work she's doing. People immediately will say she shouldn't be there anyway, taking over the thing, the white girl thing, the black girl thing. It just turns into this big debate it doesn't need to be. It's okay to have a somewhat constructive debate around kind of the show's success, the relevance of it, you know, the platforming of her, whatever it may be. But putting her in these sort of conversations, I feel like just brings about unnecessary stick that she probably doesn't need. And I feel like having her on the list of the 20 most influential creators on social media is legitimately insane. Because for the most part, people are watching the show to hear the artist speak, maybe to hear how awkward the interaction is going to be, but I don't necessarily think she's the biggest pull of the show overall, personally. Maybe I'm mistaken because I'm not really a fan of the show, who knows, but I think it's a little bit crazy. Anyway, the kind of the quick blurb on it that features her name, it says here, maybe no one has dated as many celebrities as Dimoldenberg. For 9 years, the London-based journalist, 29, God almighty, man, she looks a lot older than 29 or a lot younger. I don't know, but we continue. Has been taking notables on dates, interviews in the city's fried chicken restaurants in which she awkwardly flirts and deploys her signature deadpan wit. Airing them on YouTube channel Chicken Shop Date that started as a bit of a has become a sensation, attracting stars like Ed Sheeran, Daniel Kaluuya, and Shania Twain. Let's just hope that she doesn't get her long anticipated date with Drake because she pledged it will be her last. So whatever. But I don't know. I just think this is crazy. Putting her as the 20 most influential, it doesn't make any sense to me personally. But again, what do I know? Not going to speak on it too much because when I start ranting and raving about the Caucasians, you know, people are not happy. So we're gonna move off of that one, and we're gonna roll on and continue, right? We're gonna just roll on and continue. Now, the main thing I actually wanted to touch upon, and something that I feel like is really interesting to speak about, is of course what happened at the flipping Met Gala. I'm not sure if some of you care or if some of you have been paying attention to it, but damn almighty, that Met Gala, 2023 Met Gala, where the theme was essentially Karl Lagerfeld, was a little bit underwhelming overall. Now, I'm not too sure if this is a thing about, you know, culture overall, in terms of where we are, in terms of it being a recession, we're living in mini, you know, whatever it may be, recession that we're in, or just general apathy over there in the world. But I feel like the kind of attention on it wasn't as much as it was in prior years. People don't really give a fuck. I don't know, it just felt a little bit off overall. But I also think this was legitimately one of the best years in terms of seeing some really good attempts at kind of nailing the theme from the men. Because for whatever reason, whenever men go to the Met Gala, they usually just kind of phone it in. It's usually kind of low-hanging fruit. It's usually kind of just doing the bare minimum in the tuxedo, regardless of the theme, and not really going for it. But I feel like a lot of the dudes, especially the guys who claim to be heterosexual, were ridiculously good. They put some really good outfits together and absolutely smashed it. But overall, it felt like a bit of a lame duck, and it doesn't really kick off the way it probably should have kicked off, personally for me. Not too sure why that's the case, but it's just one of those things that kind of happened. Anyway, going on to it, courtesy of Vogue, we have here some celebrity looks I'm going to quickly go through and speak about some of my favorites and some of the worst that I've seen there. So we're going to just quickly scroll through them and see what some of you guys think. Also, you can let me know in the chat what your thoughts are. So, number one, obviously, pick it. I'm saying for sure, I think Rocky, ASAP Rocky, definitely had one of the best looks for men. I feel like he absolutely smashed the theme. The look that he had on was a look that Karl Lagerfeld specifically wore when he was walking down the runway at the end of a Chanel show. I forgot what year it was, but essentially he had the same sort of garb on. He had his signature blazer, white shirt, skinny black tie with a tartan skirt over some trousers, and his signature big boots, right? Desert boots, Chelsea boots, whatever you want to call them. And he looks amazing, and I feel like Rocky really kind of snapped and made that look work really well for him. He even kind of changed his hair and had his braids kind of falling flat a little bit. I would have maybe liked him if he would have went all the way with it and kind of maybe got a wig installed at, what's his name, by that guy who does Nicki Minaj's hair. I think is Tate something. I think Angry Tate, whatever his name is. That would have been pretty cool. He got a little headpiece done, or just bleached his hair on some Playboy Carti tip and just hoped for the best. That would have been sick. So I feel like he actually smashed it. Rihanna's look, I feel like, was a bit of a letdown, especially considering that she arrived like 3 hours late. She was one of the last people to kind of arrive there overall. And if I'm not mistaken, she also kind of hid the outfit as well as she was kind of leaving the flipping hotel. She didn't want anyone to see it before she hit the red carpet. So I think overall that look was a bit of a letdown from Rihanna, but she has more wins than losses, so it is what it is. I thought Cardi B's actual look that she wore at the Met Gala was way better than what we saw her coming out of the hotel with. She had this horrendous like prom pink dress on that I thought was pretty awful, but I did like the actual final outfit that she wore on the red carpet, if not a bit forgettable. I thought the young lady Jenna Ortega looked absolutely incredible, especially when you consider this was Tom Brown, if I'm not mistaken. It's in Tom Brown, so she wore this amazing look in Tom Brown that kind of looked a little bit like Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld Chanel, especially with all the kind of embellishments and tweeds and some of the pearls and whatnot. But I feel like she absolutely smashed this look. She looked incredible in Tom Brown. So big up Jenna Ortega. I thought, what's his name, Pedro Pascal. Some of you may know him from Mandalorian, of course, The Last of Us. I felt he looked fairly decent also. If anything, this kind of look reminds me a little bit of some gay guys I used to work with at Dr. Martens and places like Selfridges and H&M. If you know, you know. There's a particular kind of personality of a gay guy that works these retail stores that loves to wear like button-up shirts with shorts and boots like this. Like, if you know, you know. Like, some of you guys, if you don't know, you don't know. But if you worked in retail, if you worked in fashion stores in general, you would know this kind of look of this kind of, this Mediterranean. They're usually super cool, right? Spanish, Italian gay guys who are usually really buff, and all the girls like them and shit because they're super handsome, but they usually love wearing like tailored shorts, socks and boots. And I feel like Pedro Pascal had that exact same look on, so I did kind of fuck with it just on that scale. Then we had one of my favorite looks, I thought, overall. And again, we need to give this guy credit because he gets hated on too much on flipping fashion Twitter, and that is Matthew Williams. Matthew Williams designed this amazing custom look for Gigi Hadid, Givenchy, custom look by Matthew Williams, and I feel like she absolutely destroyed. She looked absolutely incredible, in my opinion. Really, really amazing. Love the lace, love just everything about it looks amazing. She looked incredible. So big up Gigi Hadid. She looked great there. Kendall Jenner, legitimately one of the worst looks I've seen overall. This weird cape, this weird contraption, whatever it may be, was just horrendous. And it's kind of interesting because, body wise, this woman, body for days, right? Clearly could put on a flipping plastic bag and look great. But sometimes, regardless of what you look like physically, if the outfit is dead, the outfit is dead. And that was kind of comforting to see. That it doesn't matter if you're fat or small. Sometimes if your outfit is dead, it's going to look dead. And this is a good example of it. So Kendall Jenner, no thank you for me. Kim Kardashian, the same thing. This, I think, was a big miss. The whole entire, what was the actual thing? It was by Schiaparelli, which I thought was really horrible. I didn't like anything about it. I thought the hair looked pretty nice, but I thought everything else was overdone and a bit yawny. And I feel like we've seen this look from Kim before, so I wasn't really a fan of it. Especially wearing Skims on a red carpet, it's a bit much, isn't it? One of my favorite looks was this. from the elite white woman of all white women. She legitimately might be, and again, this is something that I'm going to say as a personal preference. I think Anne Hathaway might be the hottest white woman on earth. Stone cold fact. Take all the Caucasian ladies out there, Anne Hathaway might be the hottest white woman in the world, in my opinion. She is disgustingly good looking, like on another level. She just looks, she kind of is the kind of woman who I think if you saw in real life, you legitimately be stuttering, like Flocko style. Like you would legitimately be lost for words if you saw her in real life. I think she's that kind of person who you would see her in real life and you would legitimately faint. Like she looks gorgeous, and she had this custom Versace look that looked absolutely beautiful. Personally, I think she was definitely one of my favorites I saw on the red carpet. Ridiculous look. Look at the detailing on some of these clips here that look like they're holding the dress together, like with the pearls, different color. Oh, nah, she's amazing. People are saying Natalie Portman, but nah, man, Anne Hathaway is legitimately elite. Anne Hathaway is elite. I don't care what anyone says. This lady is a fucking smoke show, and she's aged gracefully. She looks amazing in clothes, and she just looks friendly as fuck. Like she's awesome. Anne Hathaway forever. Gianni Versace, you know, less said about her the better. She's a legend, so we're gonna keep on moving here. Jennifer Lopez and Ralph Lauren, we don't care about Jennifer Lopez. I thought Doja Cat's look where she dressed up like one of Karl Lagerfeld's cats, I felt was pretty cool, especially the makeup that she had on. I kind of felt like her essentially meowing and purring in all the interviews was also pretty interesting and fun. She just had a bit of fun with it. She didn't take herself too seriously. People online were flipping losing their shit, but I felt like that was cool. I was all for it. So big up Doja Cat in Oscar de la Renta. I thought Salma Hayek and Gucci, not for me personally. Lil Nas X was doing way too much with his look also. I feel like this was incredibly unnecessary. This entire silver bedazzled cat suit type of thing he had on, where he essentially was trying to dress up like a cat also, but ended up looking horrendous. He ended up looking like that guy in 300, but a silver version. You know, that kind of giant guy in 300. He kind of looked like him, but if you look really closer into it, this is kind of like, look, it's all kind of, you can see his skin color inside of his boots. So the boots aren't tight enough on his body to kind of hide the sort of, you know, the paint hasn't gone right down to the bottom, and it just looks a little bit of a mess. I think towards the end, he ended up getting a hole down here, or maybe I think the paint came off on his knee, as you can see a little bit here. I wasn't really a fan of it. I think it was a bit excessive, a bit too much. And from red carpet look to go on a red carpet with a freaking in your tighty whities was a little bit too much, personally for me. I didn't like that at all. I thought Kylie Jenner's look was, you know, was a little bit MTV Awards. I don't think this was probably needed at the Met Gala. It wasn't really on theme at all in the slightest, but she looked comfortable, if that makes any sense. So big up to her. And for sure, this look, this dress is good. If it hasn't been copied or duped already, it's definitely going to get copied and duped on places like ASOS and all those other places like Shein and shit. Girls are going to be loving this because it looked really comfortable. That's one thing. She could definitely look comfortable. But, mate, honestly. Then you've got, what's her name? Aubrey Plaza. I thought looked fairly nice. I like this for Aubrey Plaza in Stella McCartney and Jimmy shoes. I like the addition of the gloves. Again, there was a real distinct lack of hats being worn at the Met Gala, which I thought was a really kind of an oversight that a lot of these guys and girls should have gotten into, because it would have added to the theatrics of it all and kind of been more in line with the theme. But hey, what do I know? Bad Bunny in Jack Moose was fairly decent. People are going crazy over this, but it was basically an all white Coke white suit, double breasted, really elegant looking with the back blown out, which was kind of interesting, but overall not the greatest, but he swagged it out. So big up Bad Bunny, big up Benetta. I thought Billie Eilish looked fairly terrible, not gonna lie. I just think in general she doesn't look the greatest in clothes unless she's wearing streetwear stuff. I think when she puts on like grown woman clothes, she just looks a bit strange. Maybe because we've seen her as a child from the beginning, but I don't know. It just doesn't vibe with me personally. I didn't like it in the slightest, but hey, what do I know? Then we got Jenna. Is it Jenna Ortega? No, Olivia Rodrigo. That's her name. Jenna Ortega. big up Olivia Rodrigo. She's been a bit silent since the first album dropped. I think the new album about to drop soon, so good to see her back out there again. Wasn't fan of the dress or Eva by Tom Brown. This is definitely a letdown, I feel like, and she definitely deserved better. But again, what do I know? Of course, Bradley Cooper came out and absolutely gave us nothing. So big up Bradley Cooper. What else can we say? What else can we say about flipping Giselle Bundchen in this Chanel? Like one of the flipping icons in modeling, and just come out there and flipping stung, right? Absolutely incredible outfit that she had on there. So big up her. Pete Davidson absolutely did the bare minimum, turned up to the Met Gala wearing a bucket hat. He wore a bucket hat with gloves and sunglasses, like looking terrible. I don't know why he bothered turning up. They didn't even bother listing what he was wearing because he looked absolutely insane. So big up Pete Davidson. Nick Jonas, is it Nick Jonas? Yeah, turned up with Priyanka Chopra Jonas. They've actually got a show at the moment. What's it called? Is it Diplomat? No, it's not called Diplomat. It's called something. It's on Amazon at the moment. Watch it. It's pretty good. If you like thrillers, and she's in it, she's fairly decent in the show. She's kind of annoying outside of watching stuff of her acting, but I think she's a fairly competent actor. I'm not gonna lie. I quite like her in the series, so definitely check that out if you haven't seen it before. I wish I remember the name. What's it called? What's her name? Priyanka. What's her name? Priyanka Chopra. She's in some show on Amazon I'm watching at the moment. What's it called here? It's called something. I'm scanning here on my phone. It's a new TV show that I'm watching on Amazon. 2 episodes are out now. Let's see here. Oh, it's called Citadel. It's called Citadel. If you like Jason Bourne type style TV shows, check that out. Again, it's not as good as Jason Bourne. It's not as good, but it's definitely, decent enough to kind of keep you occupied if you've got nothing else to watch. We've got Here a Look from Cara Delevingne in Karl Lagerfeld, and Stuart Wisman's shoes, which is fairly decent. I didn't like it too much, but I actually liked her look before. I think when she left the hotel, she had this kind of look where she kind of dressed up like Karl Lagerfeld. I kind of like that. Lizzo, I felt looked pretty decent also, especially considering this is an archive look that she kind of, had it custom made to sort of fit her figure, and just generally I felt looked pretty decent. Then we've got Nicole Kidman, looked amazing, but unfortunately Nicole Kidman ruined it with those god awful shoes with that outfit. I don't know why she decided to wear those. Keith Urban, did what Keith Urban does. He put on a suit, all well and being here. A person called Eli Fanning looks fairly decent. I love the little bow thing that she's got on her head. I would have taken off the cardigan, whatever that is. Margot Robbie, again, one of the most beautiful women in the world, but for some reason her team really kind of sailed down the river with red carpet looks. She looked awful, I think, just boring. It's really weird how that happens, because visually she's clearly a very beautiful woman, but wherever they put her in clothes, she just doesn't look that, there's never like, I don't feel like she doesn't have a look for the history books. Apart from her looks in movies, I feel like when she's doing red carpet looks, there's nothing that you kind of remember. So, oh my gosh, she looked amazing here. I'm not too sure why that is. Maybe her stylist team are shit. Maybe she doesn't care. But I think Margot Robbie deserves definitely better there. But what do I know? I feel like fucking what's her name? I keep forgetting these people's name. Dua Lipa. I felt looked incredible. If anything, I would have liked Dua Lipa to have taken this look to the end. If I'm not mistaken, this is an archive look from like the 90s when Karl Lagerfeld was designing for Chanel. And in the archive look, I think it might be 94 or something. In the archive look, it actually comes with a little jacket. This look that she has on, this amazing dress, which looks like a flipping princess. It legitimately comes with a little jacket and a hat. And I feel like she wore the jacket and a hat, it would have helped to make the tie look a little bit better, personally. But she probably didn't like the jacket, or they probably couldn't make it fit in time, who knows. But I thought Dua Lipa looked great. Emily Ratajkowski looked really awesome also. Big up her. Idris Elba turned up in the white suit with his wife. It looked incredible, so big up them. I didn't like the skirt too tough, but I thought they looked fairly good. Mindy Kaling, I'm not too sure who that is. Marc Jacobs turned up with Paris Hilton. I thought Paris Hilton's outfit was fairly nice. And then Lily Collins and Vera Wang was awesome also. Michelle Yeoh, I wasn't really a fan of. Too Tough. There's another one. There's a couple other dudes here I want to quickly check out. Naomi Campbell was fairly, I feel like, underwhelming. Although it was an archive look, I feel like she could have come a bit harder than that, but still fairly well put together. Emily Blunt looked pretty good. Emma Chamberlain, what is this, man? Miu Miu for this theme didn't make any sense personally. I feel like this was really a missed opportunity. It didn't look like anything fit that great. I just don't understand, as a choice for a Met Gala where you're honoring Karl Lagerfeld, to wear Miu Miu just seems a bit odd, especially current Miu Miu. I just didn't understand this. This wasn't the greatest from her. I think Emma Chamberlain deserved better from that. Personally, I thought Kiki Palmer looked absolutely incredible. Post baby weight, Kiki Palmer looks great. She's quote unquote filled out in all the right places, if you know what I mean. She looks absolutely incredible. So big up Kiki Palmer. She looked incredible wearing Sergio Hudson. And then of course, the G of all G's, Jared Leto. The best look that I like about him was when he's in a furry outfit, looking like a flipping cat. That was the best look personally for me. And I love how it annoyed loads of people on social media, especially some of those more snobbier fashion people out there who just don't know how to have some fun and let their hair down. I think he did a really good job by basically injecting some much needed fun into the proceedings. So I feel like Jared Leto looked absolutely incredible. I love both looks, but especially the furry cat suit where he dressed up like one of Karl Lagerfeld's cats. So big up Jared Leto for that one. JT from, Young Miami from City Girls, I thought looked pretty great also. It was a pretty decent coming out moment for her, isn't it? To be kind of invited to the Met Gala was probably a big deal, and to kind of get that look was great. So I feel like this is a fairly decent first appearance at the Met Gala, so big up Young Miami. And what's her name, Janelle Monáe, not for me personally. Tom Brown, I'm not really the biggest Tom Brown fan out there. We got Diddy in his bisexual Batman suit, and everyone's calling on social media, which is hilarious. They're calling it bisexual Batman, but I feel like Diddy's outfit was a little bit too much, a little bit too gaudy, a little bit too much black. I would have maybe broken up a little bit slightly, but still, you know, Diddy's got to do what he's going to do. I think it's head to toe Sean John. I don't know about those two people. You got Thames here and Robert Woon. I think the guys got done dirty with Burberry. You got Burna Boy here wearing one version of Burberry, and then you got Skepta in the back wearing a different version, so same color, different sort of check patterns going on there, which is pretty crazy. Mary J. Blige looked like she was going to explode, but you know, we let Auntie do what Auntie does, and the rest, you know, the rest of the rest. There's more here I want to go through, but my screen here is not loading for some reason, and I can't see them, and there's too much to mention, and I don't want to go through the whole entire thing, and maybe we should here. We got who this lady here, Madeline Klein, I don't know who that is. You've got Julius Tennant and Viola Davis. Viola Davis looks incredible. I thought she looked really good. Tiana Taylor, I thought looked really good in her Tom Brown. Maybe a bit much, but she looked great. What's the basketball player, Brittany Griner, looked absolutely horrendous. This legitimately looked like what Shaq used to look like. Do you remember Shaq? Oh, sorry. That's what I remember. Is it Shaq in a brown suit? Yeah, that's it. Shaq cream suit. There's a picture of Shaq in a cream suit, and I legitimately thought that's what Brittany Griner looked like. I think this is Shaq from the 90s also. There's this famous image of Shaq standing next to this woman. I don't know who the woman is. Maybe it's his wife. This is the one. Do you remember this picture? From ages ago. This is during, I think, MTV Music Awards video. MTV Music Awards, right? There's Shaq standing. Is that his wife or somebody? I don't know who that is. Maybe it's his wife in this outfit. This is what that Brittany Griner outfit looked like to me. It legitimately reminded me of this. I swear to God. This is what it reminded me of. That is what Brittany Griner was going for. Like this shit. Like she looked legitimately awful. Like what the hell is she doing, brother? Like god damn, Britney deserved better than that. You don't sit in a gulag in the middle of Russia, you know what I mean, and end up at your first Met Gala looking like this. She deserved better than this, man, for sure. They did her dirty. But anyway, what can we do? We go in here. Alexander Danarino in Dior Home. I don't know who that is. Oliver Roystig looked amazing, I thought, personally, in Balmain. The tote bag was a nod to a classic tote that I forgot what the brand that did, but basically Karl Lagerfeld embraced the tote and started wearing it around, which was super iconic, and kind of, you know, Olivier basically as a nod to Karl did the tote for Balmain in this amazing leather with Karl who emblazoned on the outside, which looked absolutely incredible. So that was a really nice little nod for the heads out there who know. And then we also have here Maya Penn and Stuart Vevers here. Not really a fan of that look. You got Erica Badu in Marnie. Not really a fan of that look either. You got Russell Westbrook in Bode, which looks, I think, absolutely terrible. Personally, for me, not the best. You got Alex Noel and Christian Serrano. Not for me. You got Carla Bruni when she's not being racist. She's over here in the United States, you know, doing her thing, looking what she's looking like in Karl Lagerfeld. One of my favorite looks was this guy. Whoever this person is, Conan Gray. Not really too familiar with Conan Gray or Conan Gray, Conan, however you pronounce his name. But I thought Conan Gray in Balmain was incredible. I really loved this. Was one of my favorite men's looks for sure. I think the men absolutely smashed it, and I feel like he was definitely one of the standouts. Like, this looks incredible. All the pearls, all the detailing. This looks great. The classic sort of like Karl Lagerfeld inspired, you know, Chelsea boots with the Cuban heel boot type of things they had going on, like, you know, with the extra bit of height inserted there. I think it looked incredible. This guy, Zach Poston, not too familiar with that one. This dude, I think Jeremy Pope, the actor, he looked really good also in this outfit that featured a cape with Karl Lagerfeld's image sort of like emblazoned on it. I thought this looked really awesome. So big up Jeremy Pope for taking chances there. Stella McCartney arrived. She looked great also, especially considering her age. She looks incredible. Big up Stella McCartney. I think this lady looked really great. Lily James, she was wearing Tamara Ralph Couture. This was really cool. It's an amazing leather look. And this lady also is looking really cool. I like her. Amanda Seyfried in Oscar de la Renta. And of course, Kate Moss, not the greatest personally for me in Fendi. And my guy, Alton Mason in Karl Lagerfeld, I felt really cool also, personally. Again, you know, I felt the guys all smashed it at the Met Gala, but overall, it was a bit of a damp squid. I feel like it didn't really kind of hit the notes it probably should have hit. But hey, it kind of is what it kind of is in that regard. I'm not going to bore you too much with more Met Gala looks, but that is my overall impression of it so far and what I've seen overall. So, what else have we got here I want to speak about? What else do we have here that I want to speak about? Let's move on to this one. Let's see. Oh, that's what I talk about. So, I think I mentioned my topic that I want to mention here before I close out was regarding Pharrell. So Pharrell was at his festival called Something in the Water, and he may have debuted what we may see for his up and coming collection for Louis Vuitton, right, at the Something in the Water festival. And so far, it's kind of looking underwhelming, not gonna lie. It shouldn't be a surprise for most people. I think, you know, considering Pharrell's expertise isn't really in fashion, especially when it comes to creating a whole entire line. I've said it before. I think some of his greatest work has come from being under the tutelage of a Nigo and a skate thing with Billionaire Boys Club. What he did with that in the beginning was, you know, crazy good. And also his smaller capsule collections and collaborations were awesome. You know, whether it be the stuff he did with Moncler or whatever, bits and bobs, glasses, stuff he's done in terms of, you know, shoes and whatnot, great. But I feel like he's maybe not the greatest dude to go overall and be like designing a 30 plus look collection. Probably isn't going to sit the greatest. And so far, judging from what I've seen, little drips and drabs. First of all, this picture that we have here of Pharrell wearing what looks to be like a motocross inspired jacket, which features some Louis Vuitton, logos and whatnot, and branding and some other bits and pieces and something in the water on there, you would assume that some of this stuff may be things he has may have been working on in his atelier over there in Paris, right? When he's not performing on stage, when he's not gallivanting around going to private views, this is maybe what he's been designing on the side. I'm not too sure, because I don't think we've seen a single picture of him in the studio so far, designing or anything. So I don't know when he last actually picked up the pencil and made something, but who knows. But I'm not really that encouraged by it. I think what we're going to see from Pharrell Louis Vuitton coming up is definitely a really well-produced show. It's going to be a fun show. There's going to be some great music. Maybe someone will come out and perform. Maybe you have an incredible band. But I think the quality of the clothes won't be that great. Personally. It won't be that interesting. Maybe not great. It won't be that interesting. I feel like Virgil, God bless the dead, even though you maybe didn't rate it, it really was interesting. I feel like, it kind of offered up a really good conversation starter. It maybe was a really good sort of like insight and sort of like a snapshot into what he was thinking, at that time, and where he was, creatively, artistically. But I feel like with Pharrell, we'll get a very well produced fashion show. It may actually be one of those things that kind of pushes things forward, but will it be great in terms of fashion? I don't know. In terms of the clothing, I'm not too sure, because from what I've seen so far, the motocross jacket trend thing, I feel like is kind of dying. I feel like that was a thing maybe a couple of years ago. It's sort of like towards the end of it. And, I don't know. If I was Louis Vuitton, would I want my name associated and brand with such basic merch like this? Or such easy to kind of glean from pieces like this? I don't really know. I'm not really too sure. And then to make matters even worse, the official festival merch for something in the water is like, I don't know, £1,000 or something, right? This is meant to be, imagine, right? Look where we are in culture. People attend festivals, and when you go to festivals, usually there's some merch from the festival that they make that you can buy there. And it's usually kind of shit that you probably wouldn't wear outside the festival anyway, but it's something to commemorate your time there and to kind of give you a little bit of something to look back on during your time, and maybe a little bit of a memento. So maybe it's not even something that you wear, it's just something you kind of have in your wardrobe just to kind of say, oh yeah, I went to this festival. So you do that and you don't mind spending $20, $30, $50. But would you spend $800 to buy this Pharrell designed Louis Vuitton merch collection for a festival? And this is likely going to be like $800 plus, because Louis Vuitton t-shirts probably start at $500. So for a t-shirt to go to a festival, so the funny thing about it is that most likely the t-shirt is more than the actual festival ticket. And from what I'm led to believe, and the clips I've seen online and the lineups they have, Something in the Water is actually one of the better festivals out there. It's pretty decent. So you're paying more for a flipping t-shirt than you're paying for a festival that features some really incredible artists covering a whole breadth of genres in an interesting part of the USA in terms of Virginia that people probably don't really think about too much when it comes to live music or when it comes to festivals, especially in a big scale in this way. But it's obviously the birthplace of someone as influential as Pharrell and countless other musicians who have come out of there. But him bringing that festival to a place like Virginia, I'm sure has helped the local economy. So it's amazing, it's awesome, but it's still a festival merch. Imagine spending that much on festival merch. Like the t-shirts, just design wise, look awful, I think. On the front, it's got Virginia is for lovers with the LV on there, right? A bit cringe, a bit lame. And at the back, it's got Paris to VA, VA to Paris. And then you have this denim jacket featuring the square print that Louis Vuitton's kind of famous for. And again, it's got the same logo and the t-shirt on the back of it. And then you got the hoodie. Like, this legitimately is ridiculously uninspiring and awful. And if this is any kind of prelude or indication of where Pharrell is going with his appointment at Louis Vuitton, I think everybody like myself included who was skeptical of his appointment in the first place and felt it was a little bit underwhelming considering all the heavyweight talent that was sort of been, floated about before he was appointed, like the Martin Rose out there and whatnot. For him to go out there and put together a collection that might feature stuff like this on a runway, it's going to be crazy to see the reviews, because if this is an indication of what we're going to see, it's going to be absolute massacre on that runway. It's going to be a well-produced show. for sure, but the clothing is going to be great. I don't think so, from what we can see so far, because from what we see so far, it looks very uninspiring. The motocross jacket, I feel like it's been done to death overall, the trend wise, and I feel like this merch leaves a lot to be desired, especially if you have all the resources that Louis Vuitton have to create this sort of merch to give to your fans. Is crazy, and to also charge as much as it's probably charging for it is wild. Let's actually check the link to go to the store to see how much is they're retailing for, but I would imagine the merch is retailing for $500 minimum for sure, for festival merch, which is usually nothing more than $50. Usually nothing more than $50. So it's loading up on the screen now for me, and from what I can see so far, holy shit. Okay, no, okay. I thought this is the merch. This is just the regular stuff that's first to come into the store. Okay, there's not so much. We don't really have any details of it yet. Let's just click more. I thought this is okay because I saw like 1,200 for a bracelet. I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. But I think so. Regardless of it loading, I think it's going to be a real steep price, and you're gonna have to just, you're gonna have to back out the flipping wallet if you want one of those for sure. Anyway, that has been the Action Zinga Show, episode number 669, I think. Thanks so much for tuning in. Been a pleasure to have your company. If you're listening to the show via the audio platform, you'll hear my tune of the day underneath playing this flipping sound of me speaking. If you're watching via the audio platform of the show, point of the show, you won't hear nothing. You'll just fade to black. And then the show will end. But thanks again for tuning in to the Action Zinga Show. It's been a pleasure to have your company. I really have enjoyed it. For those of you watching live, hang on. I will be starting the live stream for the random show. So if you want to do that, jump onto the random show live stream. You'll be able to find out on my channel if you're already on there. And then I'll see the rest of you guys again very soon. Thank you for tuning in. Been a pleasure. Never a chore. See you guys again very soon. Take care. Peace. 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 Peace.